beautiful. Glad to see it. So welcome to episode 2 of Hyperfixation, our show where we get distracted and have fun, talking about different topics. Last week we talked about science, all caps with exclamation mark. This week's theme is nostalgia, specifically retro video games, game before the Y2K. So just a quick introduction of everyone who's here. I'm Gavin. I'm a third year computer science student.
Woo. I'm Tyler. I'm a second-year geography student.
I'm Branden. I'm in the Tesla program.
And I'm Ben, and I'm with the library.
So this time we've got the regular 3 hosts, and then we've also got Ben here as our special guest for the show today. And we're going to talk about retro video games. So we didn't really start off with this, but who wants to go first? Who wants to start?
Well,
you got one, Tyler? Go for it. Yeah.
That's like, I know we're all probably pretty excited about this topic.
I'm drawing first blood. You guys get out of the way.
Okay, paint me a word picture.
I actually want to start with what do you guys think counts as a retro game? This is a hot topic, right? Because I feel like when it comes to retro games, typically people draw a cutoff point maybe around the time when we went from pixel graphics to something else, right? The pixel 3D.
I think it varies.
Maybe
later.
Yeah, it very varies. Yeah. I think our 2000 cutoff date is pretty close to where a lot of people could. If we wanted to go a little earlier, I could say 1998 before the Dreamcast came out.
Yeah, which is funny because 2000 that includes the PlayStation, and the PlayStation was a 3D console.
PlayStation. Yeah, it's.
Yeah.
But there was a big. It felt like there was a big jump. After the PlayStation 1. PlayStation 1 got or N64 and PlayStation 1 got
I was going to say that I was going to say, if you wanted to be really technical about it, I'd say right before you hit the jump to actual 3D graphics. I think anything before then is what I would define as typically considered retro, right? Yeah. So when you're going for an evocative game and you're I want to build a retro game, you're going for 16-bit, you're going for 32-bit, you're going for that pixel art, right? You're not going for... At least generally speaking, you're I'm not going to go for the lowest poly Donkey Kong.
Well, that's true.
Aesthetic.
People would probably like Doom, the original Doom, would be considered a retro.
Yeah, because that's still using flat assets, right? It's just moved in a really weird way. It's 2.5D almost, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But I think for us, we defined it as 2000 because that was formative for most of us, right? At least for me.
Yes. Okay,
Tyler's a baby.
Tyler baby.
The difficult thing about retro is that chronologies are relative.
Yeah.
Retro will keep on moving further and further.
Someone asked me if I considered PS2 retro, and I was like, no, we're not allowed. We're not
for my own. Well, I mean, you got to know there's definitely people who in the university now who'd probably consider the GameCube and 360.
And there are different generations of gamers, right? It was really interesting listening to some Noah Caldwell-Gervais, where he was talking about trying to understand things like some of the new Fallout series and this emphasis on community building and whatnot. And he's okay, this doesn't really necessarily speak to me, but I get it because there's a whole new design kind of mentality that these kids came of age playing video games, playing things like Minecraft, which is a very different way of interacting. So there are different what's considered to be retro.
Yeah, where so many of us grew up on single-player games because that's all there was for a lot of us older gamers. And that co-op,
and networking was a nightmare.
Now this again going off topic a little bit. I remember a time. If you wanted more than 2 players on a console, you had to get a special adapter so you could plug it in, and then you could plug in up to 4 controllers. And now it's just just a given feature on so many games now.
So, fun fact, you mentioned 1998 specifically.
Yeah.
That's also what they're defining.
Really?
Just a basic website, but it looks like the internet also likes to consider that around the same. So, literally up to Sega Genesis, and that's it. Right? So,
that makes a lot of sense to me.
Right before you make that huge jump.
Which, I'm trying to think, because 1998 is when the Dreamcast came out, and before the Dreamcast we had the PlayStation 1, the N64, Saturn or CD, I don't remember which.
It was a Saturn.
Turbo Graphics, if anyone remembers that.
Oh yeah. No one talks about that though. Okay. It's just gone.
Or Virtual Boy.
Virtual Boy.
Virtual Boy.
It's pretty infamous.
That's why I'm still suspicious of VR. But the sets they have here in the makerspace are a lot more impressive than Virtual Boy.
Yeah, they don't make your eyes bleed as much. Although motion sickness is way more of the thing.
That is true. Yeah.
Oh, it's
my.
God. I'm just like the fact I grew up when the original VR came out, and what a disaster that was to where we are
Oh my
now.
god, the Virtual Boy is so ugly too.
It's so ugly.
And they pushed it so hard when it first came out. I remember the commercial going so hard. It's like this Virtual Boy's like chasing someone and then latches onto their face like a face hugger.
Well, I mean, back then that was super cool and revolutionary, but it was so bad.
Yeah.
I
still.
feel like the only like classic gaming peripheral that really picked up was like the Zapper.
Yes.
Yeah.
Every other thing, I'm like jank,
Yeah.
and then I
Oh,
look
yeah.
at the Zapper and all this. Like, that was so
Well,
fun. And then
well,
when you look at how that worked, realistically, that was also jank as hell too.
Oh, it was
But
super
it was,
jank.
but it was iconic jank.
yeah,
Yeah.
Duck Hunt.
Yeah.
Mwah.
Yes.
But also, there was some of those weird, like, ordinary Nintendo, like, exercise games that did have a pad that you could stand on.
Yeah.
Which
There
kind
were,
of
like, a
became,
few things here
kind of
and
became
there.
a DDR.
Or like the home
kinda.
DDRs and
Yeah,
stuff
yeah.
like that. But those were coming out in the 90s too. A lot of those like home
Yeah.
DDRs and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
But like
Yeah.
Virtual Boy, bad.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah.
Most of it was bad.
The Power Glove was also
Oh,
garbage.
yeah.
I mean, but that was what was great about Nintendo too.
Yeah.
Is Nintendo just loved coming up with gimmicks.
Yeah,
Oh,
it-
because
it-
they still consider themselves like a toy maker.
Yeah, it was kind of like the Precambrian explosion of interface design for games in the 90s.
Yeah, and I mean-
all of these variations.
And that's why like Nintendo has always been like one of my favorite companies because they've done shit. It hasn't worked, but I'm like, I like that you've done these things. And
Yeah,
tried.
I mean, even just compared to like nowadays, you got like, so it goes N64,
Yeah.
GameCube, Wii, Wii U, Switch, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And you look at that progression, and it's like, okay, so home console, just more tech,
Yeah.
motion controls, and then the like motion controls with a big goofy gamepad, and now it's just the gamepad. Like there's that weird progression, and then you look at like any of the other consoles, it's like Xbox 360,
Right.
Xbox
Yeah.
One,
Yeah.
Xbox
Yeah,
One
yeah.
X, and it's the exact same black brick
Yeah, yeah.
every
Yeah.
generation. Same with PlayStation. None of them like have done much. The closest thing was the Kinect,
Yeah.
where they're like, "Well, package it in." It's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, people don't like it. Take it back. Take it back. Take it back."
They're going for very different things though, which is fine. They can have their specialty.
PS4 and
'cause,
Xbox are simulating PCs.
Yeah.
Fuck
Yeah, exactly.
That's all they're trying to do. Is they're literally just
They're-
trying to take a bite
yeah,
out of PC gaming, whereas
and-
Nintendo's like, we want our own thing.
They're trying to do that while like keeping their own brands and like their exclusive games. And
Which
things
is
like
literally
that.
how you end up with people like, oh, PC's the best, because it's like half the consoles are literally just trying to emulate it in the
Yeah.
first
Yes,
place.
exactly.
Honestly, I've just switched over to PC. From just like, I can get more use out of a PC for so many different
Plus, I mean,
reasons.
Steam sales make
Yeah.
games so cheap.
Yeah, they just had a big sale on the Tales of games. There's like, why do I ever need a PlayStation again?
Yeah, or even like Humble Bundle, where you can just get.
Yeah.
My Steam library is 1,200 games,
Yeah, yeah.
and that's
So
all Humble
easy.
Bundle's
Yeah,
fault.
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
all Humble
Yeah,
Bundle's
yeah.
fault. I buy that monthly subscription. I get
Yeah.
it's like $10 a month, $12 a month, and I just have constant influx of like 8 games
Yeah,
a month.
This,
It's
this,
nuts.
this is like a weird aside, but
Game Boy
I
Color's
love
classic.
the fact that I can have this huge library of games on my PC now, and when I have kids eventually, I can just be like, here,
Yeah,
here's
yeah,
this
yeah.
massive library of
As
games.
long as
Like,
Steam is around,
As long as that infrastructure lasts.
Yes.
It also saddens me though sometimes when the service is out or when the internet is out, you can't play single player games always on your own computer.
to an extent. Steam, I believe,
You
some
can-
games give you about a 48-hour window when you
Right.
boot up a game
Yeah.
from like the last time you booted up a game or something like that, where
Yeah.
it checks the license or the last
Yeah.
time you had an internet connection.
Which that feels a bit insidious because part of me does just miss owning that game cartridge, that discrete unit that I
yeah,
still
Yeah.
have.
I'm always back.
Which is
and
why I
forth on
still
that,
have
too.
like
Yeah.
I have a drawer full of 360 games.
Yeah.
I have Halo 1 through 5 all on disc.
Yeah, yeah.
Same with like
Yeah.
every Assassin's Creed game I've got physically on disc.
Yeah.
Which is why I kind of like Nintendo so much, is because like they've moved with the tech a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So they got away from disc. They've switched to flash storage, which is really good,
Yeah.
way faster. And it's physical though, a
Yeah.
lot of the time.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
they have
Yeah.
the e-store, but I'm not gonna bother with it, honestly. Most of the time I'll just go pick up a game from shoppers using some
Yeah,
points.
well,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it's great because they're tiny
Yeah,
little
now.
things
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
all you need, you could have like a giant binder of so many games.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're so small that they had to put a coating on it, so you didn't need them.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just,
delicious.
yeah, oh man, it's crazy.
Crunch.
I love it.
Yeah.
One
Okay.
gripe I do have with Nintendo, like when it comes to like
If their internet services.
I was about to say that.
Not the strong suit.
Like one thing that's like really like kind of pissed me off is like I feel when it comes to like accessing a lot of these older games,
Yeah.
like obviously there's emulation
Yeah.
Yeah.
of questionable means,
Yeah, yeah.
but then also like it's weird, but talking about like older games, because like for me, like I didn't have like a lot of these older games growing up. Like,
Yeah.
I was born in like a different time period.
Of course.
Right?
Yeah.
So a lot of this came from like a lot of these digital storefronts, like the PS3 store, the PSP store, the one on the 3DS, the one on the Wii, right? And the sad thing is, like, a lot of these stores are like closing down. I don't know if you remember, like, the 3DS one, the Wii U one, the Wii closed a couple months down. And
it makes sense.
Well, I mean, they're not making much revenue. Like, how much are they actually selling of these games to hold
it
up
costs
servers
to like
and stuff?
upkeep that stuff when
right.
there's like such a small audience for it now.
My main gripe though is that I feel like when it comes to like getting access to those older games, we actually had it figured out better 10 years ago. Because like if you go on like a PS3 or a PS Vita, like there are so many old PS1 games that are accessible. They're like probably like 200 plus, right? Yeah. And for some reason,
PlayStation, when they hit the 4, they dropped all that backwards compatibility.
PS4 and PS5 don't have that.
Yeah.
It's so confusing, right? Like I feel like we've just taken a huge step backwards.
I mean, obvious example that like the backwards compatibility was such a cool idea was that the Wii had GameCube games. You could just stick the GameCube game in and call it a day, right? Same with the Wii U. Sorry, all the way up to the Wii U, they had the GameCube games sticking right in, right?
But I think that does highlight like the issue for like archivists, right? Like it is a big deal. Like if we think games are art and culture, which I think we do, then it also should be preserved in that way. And because Nintendo's a particularly bad one for not letting anyone, they'd rather see a game rot.
They're the Disney of the video game industry. Because Disney's like, oh, you like our movie? In the vault.
And that causes issues, right? And also like the ways, even emulation, right? Emulation doesn't perfectly preserve the user experience. I don't know if you know, like the original Space Invaders, you know, like the classic. When that was first made, you know the way they like speed up when you shoot more of them? That was an accident of how the hardware intersected with the software. It was actually putting too much strain on the hardware. So when you were actually clearing off aliens, you were clearing up assets so that the game would speed up to the speed it was supposed to be at.
That's a nice touch.
And you wouldn't realize that if you were just playing it from an emulator. Right? So a lot of the kind of like the texture and the tacit knowledge of these games, game cultures, game technologies get lost if they were forced to only rely upon emulation for the purposes of preservation.
Yeah, there's so much that's just like doesn't translate into new, like when they remake games for like the modern consoles or re-release them on them, there's so much missing because it's not on the original hardware. Like like I haven't played any emulated versions of it, but this is something that we're going to end up talking about later. Mega Man X, the slowdown you get in Armored Armadillo stage. That is such a big part of that stage.
You're absolutely right. Wow.
And I don't know, but I feel like that could be easily lost in like a re-release or redo of the game. But back to what we were saying before, because I was just thinking about this in terms of like, everyone's backwards compatibility is terrible. I think with the make of the Switch, Nintendo's the only one who I can kind of be like, that's fine, because they've literally just gone away from using anything like what they've had before. But it bothers me so much with like PlayStation and Xbox, because there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to.
Honestly, with Xbox, I feel like they're probably the best when it comes to backwards compatibility. Like even on like the newer Xbox consoles, I think you can get games all the way back from like the original Xbox.
To be fair, they also just don't have the library that they do.
Like I mean, like there's not really that many original Xbox games that like I can say are like big hitters, but I commend them for trying. You know what I mean?
Thank you for
thank you for
putting that thing in.
Fair enough.
Hey, Halo, Gears. I would argue that Xbox has more consistent things that they franchise than PlayStation does. Because PlayStation, a lot of the stuff that was like, oh, this is PlayStation, has strongly moved over to PC in a way that doesn't feel like it's PlayStation's anymore. Where even the Xbox ones, that's still Microsoft. So you still get a little bit of that branding, right? So like Halo, that's still an Xbox franchise, right? Like you feel that. Gears of War, Forza, the fact that Microsoft bought Rare, so you've got Battletoads, you've got those ones, right? Like Conker's Bad Fur Day, right? So like Xbox has these iconic ones, obviously not to the same scale as Nintendo, but like what does Sony have as their franchises now? God of War, Horizon.
There's a lot of games that I can think of. Like when I think of them, I think of PlayStation, but so many of them have like
they're fully branched out. Kingdom Hearts is on Switch now. Final Fantasy used to be PlayStation.
I mean, that's why I switched to PlayStation from Nintendo's.
No, exactly. It's such moved over.
It's actually kind of funny because like Final Fantasy VII was literally like the game that PlayStation used to like kill Nintendo, and now it's literally on Nintendo consoles.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, goddamn.
Yeah.
I can't. Is the remake on?
The remake
Nintendo?
isn't, but they've got like the
Is that-
HD remaster of the original,
okay.
so like not
Yeah,
quite.
yeah. Because I was gonna say, I was like, I don't think
Yeah.
that's the thing with the Switch and
It's not
Nintendo
gonna
consoles.
work.
It's not gonna have the strength that the PlayStation.
Yeah.
It's funny
Xbox
because
do.
like we were talking about like so I guess there's like Ratchet and Clank as well, but
Oh,
it's been a while since we got a Ratchet and Clank game, even a Jack and Dexter.
They did. There was that one very recently.
Yeah.
Like a year ago, right?
Yeah.
Oh, you're right. With the girl, where the internet
Yeah,
was
with
all,
the PlayStation 5.
where the internet was super
which-
weird about the girl character. Yes.
Which is a thing that
Just don't
usually
think about the
does.
internet and female characters.
Kind of worms,
But
man. Kind
I-
of worms.
That is the one reason that I still want a PS5.
I have a PS4 specifically because of God of War,
Yeah.
Spider-Man,
Yeah.
and Horizon. That's my
Yeah.
goal. 3
Yeah.
games at least exclusive to your console, and I will get it.
Yeah,
that I
I
want.
want to play Ratchet and Clank so bad.
All right. Should we finally get into the topics?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so that was fun.
That was good. That was good.
It was a tangent. That's the whole point. All right. So Tyler, you started us off on the topic.
give us a
Give us a
game.
It was a game.
Yeah. Talk to us about it.
All right. You know what? I actually mentioned earlier. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe this is on one of your lists too.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna talk about like the game that kind of like got me into like retro gaming in general. Final Fantasy VII.
That's
Because,
seven.
Yep.
It's like a really odd story, right? But I was born in 1999, right? So like I wasn't really quite around the age demographic where I could be playing a PS1 with a functional mind, right? Like, I feel like I feel like when I was like growing up and like actually having a brain, like the console that was at was like the PS2, GameCube, Xbox, and then later the Wii and the PS3 and everything like that. But I do remember when I was a kid, I had a PS3. And I remember one day my grandpa like gave me like some $50 bill for my birthday. And I remember I was at like a Shoppers Drug Mart. I think it was the one on the North Shore here in Kamloops. And I'd see like a PlayStation card. Like, oh yeah, there's like a store on there, right? Like maybe I'll like buy one, see what happens. And I remember like the guy at the counter, like I bought the $50 PSN card or whatever, and he was like, oh, you're gonna buy like Final Fantasy VII or something? And I was like, what the hell is that? Right? So I go home and I look it up. And I immediately get spoiled on the game, right? This is the most spoiled game of all time.
Oh, yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
everybody knows.
Yeah.
Everybody knows the
That's
big
literally like such a common thing.
But
like,
going through it before you knew,
Oh,
that wrecked me as a child.
When that game came out,
I had hair then. No.
Well, I mean, when that game came out, how are you gonna find that information?
Exactly.
Magazines?
Like we had like the internet was just infantile. At that point.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and the whole way the games were designed were kind of structured differently. Like a lot of a lot of the weird secrets in like kind of mid '90s games, where you have to just like jump across everything, can do this and all that, was partially to sell like game magazines explicitly to tell you where those secrets are.
Absolutely, like the
Which,
classic
like,
Nintendo Power.
Yeah.
You had to get Nintendo Power Game Pro.
Yeah,
Let's
yeah.
avoid talking game magazines because that's a future one for
Oh,
Yeah,
nostalgia.
sorry,
we will come back to
We'll,
this.
we'll come back.
Okay.
But
We'll have to watch it later
so
on.
that must have been a heck of a thing to.
Yeah. Like I actually do remember. Like I think like getting spoiled on it, like even kind of not ruined, but it changed my experience.
Yeah.
So I actually remember I didn't level up Aerith at all because I knew she was down. But then there's that one shitty part in like the tomb where you have to use her.
Yeah.
So it's like I'm here with like 2 characters and then Aerith who's like 10 levels behind everybody else.
Yeah.
And I'm stuck on this like stupid wall boss. You guys know the one, right?
I know the one.
And like I legitimately couldn't carry on with the game for a week because I read these stupid fucking forums online.
Because isn't that a
right?
timed
That's
one?
Yeah.
so
Isn't
funny.
that a timed one too? Isn't the wall like gonna crush
Yeah,
it?
like you have
it's-
like 2 minutes to finish the boss, right? And like one of my characters is doing no damage.
The idea of not leveling up a character specifically because you're not going to use them is like literally how I played Tales of Symphonia on my second one. I'm not touching you, Kratos. Get out of here.
Yeah, exactly. Get out of here, old man.
He'll literally come back halfway through the game later on, and he'll come out a specific level every time. So I don't care. You can come back later. You're not
It's
worth
like
my
there's so
XP.
many other characters I can use anyway.
I'll put Genus on here. We'll black mage the place.
Yeah, exactly. No, I love that. Yeah.
FS7 is cool. It's one of those games where it's like, I'm really excited for when they finally finish the remake. Because what is it? 2 parts? 3 parts?
Dude, I can't
as
wait.
many
for
parts as they
Yeah.
can make it.
Which 4 parts if you include the weird like in between that they made.
Yeah, I guess. But that's like a DLC thing for the
Yeah.
first one.
But it's not. It's really weird.
I'm excited to
because
see
it's
how
like a
many
whole new
full
thing.
games they drop.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Because then once that's done,
Yeah.
I guarantee you there's going to be like some wild complete edition.
I
It
mean,
was also-
considering how like has everybody here played?
I played the
remake
remake,
one.
yeah.
I haven't played the remake.
Okay,
Oh,
I won't
sure,
say
okay.
anything about it.
I haven't played
and
it either, I'm waiting.
And for the audience, I also
Yeah.
won't say anything
Yeah.
in case. But wow, I did not expect things.
Yeah, because it changes things.
Yeah,
too,
it
right?
changes things.
My understanding that is.
I will
And
say
you're
the gameplay
only-
was really, really good.
Oh,
Yeah.
so good. And that's what got me into it.
You're
'cause I
still
love
in
that.
Midgard at the end, right? Like that.
Yeah.
It ends at the end
Right,
of Midgard,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, it's you're. I think that's basically the point where they would start leaving, though.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you're like
Yeah.
a third of the actual game way through.
Yeah,
maybe?
yeah, I think so.
Even I'd say even like a quarter, really.
Yeah, I think
Maybe,
there's
yeah.
like,
Yeah.
like looking back, like I feel like because like so much of Final Fantasy VII's like identity and marketing
Is
is
type in
based off
Midgard,
Midgard.
yeah.
Like people
Yeah, yeah.
blow it up, but really it's like the first
Yeah.
like 4 to 5 hours of a 30 to 40 hour
Yeah.
game.
Yeah.
Right?
I
Like,
just
honestly,
never
it's not
played seven.
that-
Yeah.
Because so I like retro games.
Mhm.
I don't like retro 3D games.
That's
That's
fair.
They're
fair.
hard to look at sometimes.
That is valid.
Yeah.
I can go play a pixel game. That's fine.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
retro in a way that I think is charming.
Yeah.
This is retro in a way this is the limitations of the hardware.
Yeah.
Seven especially. To be fair though, it wasn't quite the limitations of the hardware, but just like
Because
the
they were still
experience of
learning
the
it.
players.
Because later on they
Yeah,
get better.
like 8
Yeah.
and 9
Yeah.
actually look
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Like they look
Yeah.
incredible.
There's like
stuff
big
looks
jump.
great. Yeah.
Like straight up a different console, you think.
But also
Yeah.
keep in mind they were developing this game. I think they initially started developing this 7 on the previous console.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
switched halfway through over.
Yeah.
I remember that
Because,
being like a whole thing in one of the videos I
Yeah,
was watching.
and that's why like there's such a big difference between like the in-game models and then like the cutscene.
Yeah.
There was some negotiations with Nintendo actually. Some early footage of like Final Fantasy VI characters.
Yeah.
Because they kind of look like the Final Fantasy VII characters in their deformity.
Yeah, because people do forget that originally Final Fantasy was a Nintendo
much.
franchise.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Up
Yeah.
until
The first like
Yeah. That was the
Yeah.
one that switched.
6, yeah.
Yeah.
All,
Yeah,
where the Switch to 3D is when they moved.
Yeah,
And I honestly, that's Nintendo's fault. Nintendo messed that
No,
up.
yeah, Nintendo dropped the fucking ball.
Nintendo created PlayStation.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
They hired them. They're like, "Hey, make us a disc drive thing," and they're like, "Turns out we don't like you." And it's like, "No."
Yeah.
And now they're
Yeah.
like, one of the 3 competitions was
Yeah.
created by them. It's like, you absolute fools.
Yeah.
And,
Oh
and
my.
Final Fantasy VII was like literally like the sword they wielded against
Yeah.
Nintendo.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
And one of
For
the things
sure.
too, like at the time period, right? It was probably one of the biggest games. It had some of the most intense kind of themes, right? Like the narrative
Yeah.
designers were like, "We're going to make a game for kids about death and mourning, and in a very particular way, and
Yeah.
very intentionally."
The
so.
tonal difference between 6 and 7 is strong,
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
Because
Dude,
6 wasn't that high sci-fi at all, was it?
It was
It
more like
was-
steampunk.
It was like steampunk.
Yeah, because that's
steampunk.
the one where the game starts off as like 3 mechs wandering
Yeah,
through the
exactly,
snow, right?
which was
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
know. And even that, like the cinematic quality
Like-
of those games at that time period on the Super,
Yeah.
even that scene, that like the sense of depth, which
Yeah.
like doesn't look like anything now, was mind blowing
Yeah,
in the 90s.
I do think that's where I got a lot of my because I've always been like a high fantasy and like sci-fi person, and that was like steampunk, high magic,
Plays
high
D-
fantasy.
Plays D&D, picks
So-
Eberron by default.
yeah. Oh my! And Final Fantasy VI narratively was also kind of interesting. Are people averse to Final Fantasy VI spoilers?
Was that Terra?
That was Terra. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think anyone's
Yeah.
gonna
My FF knowledge is solely based on Dissidia.
Okay, fair play. Yeah, that was Terra, and then
Honestly, I feel like 6 is like spoiled almost as much as 7. Anyways,
Fair.
like everybody knows Kafka
Yeah, yeah.
destroys
Yeah.
the world, right? Like
Yeah.
everybody already
well,
knows
that's the
that.
thing.
right?
But again, I know that was huge, and I don't even know any other kind of game since then have had like such an intense break partway through the game to be
Right,
like,
yeah.
and then you fail, and then you have to pick up the pieces again.
I will say it's not quite the same where it's like it's part of like the continuing of the story, but one of the Tales of games has one of the best like
Oh, okay.
ways you can end the game before the actual ending. And yeah, Gavin knows exactly what I'm talking
I
about.
like the Tales games.
I
A few
haven't
of
played them. I haven't
Yeah,
played them.
They're cool.
It's
Symphonia's my jam.
Because I've played a lot of them too. Yeah.
It's the one with the silent protagonist.
Tales of
Zisteria?
Is that the red hair protagonist?
No, it's
because that's Hysteria.
It's the guy with the he's kind of like
Zelia 2, Zelia 2, yeah.
Yes, Exelia. That Exelia.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
Exelia 2 has like the most amazing like you can veer off from the main story
There's an
and end
alternative
the
ending?
game.
I didn't know about that. I played that
It's
game.
ooh, it's dark.
Oh
it's
my.
great. You need to
that's-
try it.
So you're telling me
It's-
Zelia
okay,
2 is
okay.
good?
Yeah.
Xelia 2
Because
is
Symphonia
good.
2 is not.
No. Symphonia 2 is probably the worst sequel
It's
Symphonia
such a
game.
cool idea, but it's such a mistake.
It needed to not be Symphonia 2.
It's Pokemon. So the first one is a Tales game where your party members are all cool, like they're cool characters. You've got like 8 of them.
Yeah.
You pick
Yeah,
4.
yeah.
Symphonia 2, they're like, what if you only get 2 party members, 1 guest sometimes, and then we give you 2 Pokemon to bring with you to battle?
Yeah,
I see.
and it's like
yeah, that was a choice.
it was actually like this could be such a cool game if you didn't attach it to Symphonia 1.
Yeah, like-
because I
Yeah.
want
because the two characters also aren't. They're new characters.
Yeah,
the main two.
They're OC. They made a fan fiction game.
Exactly, yeah, this
They
is
made a
literally
fan
the
fiction
fan fiction
Pokemon
on that
game that
game.
crossed
Oh my
over
God.
with Symphonia, and the original characters just pop in at fixed levels
They're
with
just
fixed
guest
equipment
starring
to be cool.
in the Symphonia game as well.
And it's just like, no, don't do this to me.
If we're talking about Tales games, I actually have a bone to pick. I don't know when else I'm gonna get to do this.
Okay,
on the
Okay,
podcast.
yeah.
Okay, Zestiria
Yes.
is like the most mediocre game
Is that
I've ever
the
played.
red hair?
No, the one with the red hair.
Zestiria
the one with like
is-
the brown hair, and he has like kind of like the the big white vest with like the symbol on it. Zestiria was like
So mid, yeah.
it's so mid. It was like the peak of mid, man.
Yeah. I that's one of the ones I don't remember because
Exactly.
That's how
yeah,
mid it
yeah.
is. Yeah, I feel like everyone the main two have to be Vesperia.
Ooh.
Because that one's been ported to so many consoles, and it became a lot of people with Yuri, Lowell.
Oh, because Yuri was like one of the best characters
Yeah.
in the whole
Exactly.
series.
And then Tails. Those two probably the most iconic Tails.
Yeah,
games, for
Symphonia
sure.
and Vesperia.
Abyss is up there too, I think.
Oh yes, Abyss is very, very up there. I actually thought, what was the other? The one that had like the weird like 2.5.
Oh, I have no idea.
What was it?
Sales of Destiny?
No. Well, I mean, we're talking about like original games. Those ones actually picked
Yeah.
up a lot later. The original on the PlayStation ones, really good, and Nintendo, I think originally.
Interesting.
No, it was. I remember the lead character was Sinel, and he had dark skin, white hair, and he was a
Legendia.
punchy. Legendia.
There we go.
That's one no one thinks about very often. I forget about it. Yeah, those were some. That one was actually pretty good. I haven't tried the newest one, so I don't know how that one holds
That's
up yet.
Tales of Rise is pretty good.
Yeah.
I will say, like, I'm not gonna spoil anything, but I'm very close to finishing the game, and I have been for like multiple months. They've got this final dungeon, right?
Yeah.
And dude, like, the whole game was good up until this final dungeon, where it's just like, what if like we made you slog through like 8 hours of like fighting the same enemy, right?
Yeah.
It's like there's no puzzles. It's just like you go forward, you
Yeah.
fight more enemies, barely any healing points, right? Like, it just feels bad, right? Because like
Yeah.
it's like this huge fumble right at the end.
Yeah.
Like they could have just put this
That's
midway, and I would have been fine.
unfortunate.
A number of old school Nintendo games did this kind of sometimes frustrating thing with like, okay, how are we going to like up the ante in the last level?
Ooh,
We're
yeah.
going to make you fight every single boss from the game all over again in a row.
To be fair,
man,
I
you
kind of love that. As someone who goes to games and like if I'm enjoying the game,
Yeah.
I will go do a boss rush. That's a cool idea for me personally.
Okay,
Just
fair.
seems like I will
Yeah.
throw one if I for example I would have a save state directly before those boss rush parts. If
Yeah.
a game didn't already have a boss rush mode,
Yeah.
I would just load it up and I would do the boss rush right there.
I mean, to be fair, it depends on like what
Yeah.
the game was.
Mhm.
Like for the Mega Man games, I thought it worked really well.
Yeah.
Because I felt like at that point you have probably figured out like most of their weaknesses. You have
Yeah.
all
You
the
just
weapons.
switch out armors, yeah.
And I mean, if you found like certain secrets in like, particularly in like 1 and 2, it makes a lot of those
Yeah.
fights
I mean,
trivial anyways.
That is true. That is true. But
Which we'll get to even.
Yeah, we've got about 8 more
Yeah.
things to go through, so
Yeah.
just quickly on
Yeah,
FF7.
is there anything else you want to add about
Um,
7? Like your
What
personal
can I even say?
experience?
Like, I will say like one thing I think is like FF7 is one of those games that kind of suffers from like, how would I say it? Like, it's one of those games that becomes like so overrated that it becomes underrated.
Yes.
Like it goes from overrated to overhated. I feel.
Yeah,
like. You know what
That-
I mean? Like,
I will
yeah.
say that's kind of why I ended up not playing it.
Let me ask you
because it was
guys
so hyped up.
In the FF7 series, like specifically, what is your favorite property in that series? So we got
For
7,
Final Fantasy.
we've got Crisis Core, we've got Dirge of Cerberus,
Yeah.
we've got Advent Children,
Ooh.
and the remake. Like, which one of those 5 is probably your personal like attachment?
I mean, the only one I've actually played is the
Base set?
remake.
Oh, the remake. Okay,
Yeah.
so the remake.
So I admit, actually, like all the weird spin-offs from Final Fantasy VII were one of the things that made me kind of like jaded about Square Enix after their merger, because I felt I mean I haven't played a lot of these games, so
Yeah.
but I kind of felt that's when they really started like just like we're gonna put these characters into things and like just kind of throw out a whole bunch of very rapidly made games.
I can tell you this much. From someone who's my favorite is actually Crisis Core.
Okay, fair.
That's the PSP game.
Yeah.
I beat that game in a 24-hour period. I played it for like 16 hours,
God
went to
damn.
sleep for an hour and a half, woke back up. Before my eyes were open, I had the
Jesus.
PSP back in my hand, and I was going at it again.
That's great.
I played that game non-stop
Fair,
for like
fair.
a full 24-hour period,
Yeah.
beat it, and I was like, ooh. I over-leveled myself so much. So this game is like 15 years old. And it also is a prequel to the main
Yeah,
game.
yeah.
So I'm going to spoil here. So
Yeah.
Everybody knows the end.
Yeah, at the end of Crisis Core, Zach, best boy, he's in this photo here. This good-looking man. He dies.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing. Is because in 7, again, not really a huge spoiler because it's the old games. Cloud thinks he's Zach.
Yeah.
Like that's the whole thing.
Yeah, he literally thinks so.
Yeah.
Which is actually one of my favorite parts about FF7 in general. Like I think that's like a very good aspect.
The identity.
Yeah.
Well,
I think it's an
superhero.
underrated part of the whole thing.
Yeah, the Sentinel in Marvel Comics is very much of a similar idea where it's like he thinks he's someone he's not, and it's got that whole like mind Shutter Island vibe to it, right? Like, so I power leveled my Zack so hard that in that final fight where you're forced to die, they could not kill me. So eventually, after like 20 minutes of me never dying, killing every mob that spawned too quickly, the game just fucking killed me. It's just like, you're out. It's done. We need to give you the final
hand of
cutscene.
fate
Yeah,
descends.
exactly.
God smites you.
Such a good game, though. What about you, Tyler? What's
Rocks
your favorite
fall,
FF7?
everyone dies.
So like I've never played Crisis Core,
Okay.
but
You played Dirge of Cerberus?
I had the unfortunate pleasure.
Okay.
I feel like
so
when-
What a way to put
so I
that.
did dodge a bullet there.
when
then.
you asked like
I like
anybody
Dirge.
is like Dirge of Cerberus your favorite, I'm like no human being is going to say that shit.
But it's fun.
Like you know what I mean? Like
It's like how Shadow the Hedgehog is a fun game. It's not what you wanted. It's not what you wanted from that series,
Yeah,
but it is fun.
It is fun in just how bizarre and bad it is. It's so bad.
Because Dirge of Cerberus is the Shadow the Hedgehog of that series.
Yeah,
Pretty much.
That makes so
They
much
both
sense. Yeah.
took like a kind of like an anti-hero character, and they both just like slapped a few guns on them and were like run around and shoot things in a completely different gameplay. All right, what's your next game? Let's or you still,
One last thing, just because
Yes.
we're talking about Final Fantasy VII. One of my Final Fantasy VII related things, Shenmue Bridge, Final Fantasy VII. So freaking good.
yeah, and big bad
Funny.
bosses.
Yeah, their song.
so
the
good.
Villain boy band.
Yeah.
So
I believe they're the ones who have the like abbreviated plot of Final Fantasy, or that might just be straight Ego Raptor, but
good. That or the is it the
Where-
team player select the Ninja Sex Party Eagle Raptor?
yeah, that's big bad
Starbomb.
bosses.
Starbomb.
Oh, Starbomb. Yes, Starbomb has a really funny bit about
Yeah,
FF7.
Anyway,
Yeah,
please
sorry.
go ahead.
my next game I wanted to talk about like it's not like a specific game. I guess I could pick a specific game, but I wanted to talk more about like the Game Boy Color. Because I feel like when it comes to like a lot of these discussions, like I feel like most of us are gravitating towards like the console games, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And with retro games, like I feel like handhelds, you start to think about it a lot more like around like the DS, GBA,
Yeah,
PSP,
that was
right?
the
That was
foldy
kinda
one.
like the-
that was
Yeah,
my one.
The golden
Yeah.
age, right?
I
You know
had
what I mean?
I had the brick, and
Zoe brought up the-
I played Pokemon Red on that
just
thing.
I just had the original myself. Yeah.
Zoe literally brought up the Game Boy Color when we were talking earlier, saying that she
Oh,
uses her
yeah.
blue Game Boy Color.
Yeah, the Game Boy Color was good.
Because like the first video game I myself owned was like a hand-me-down Game Boy Color with Pokemon Crystal on it.
Hey,
That's a good one.
That's
And
a
that-
good one to start with.
That is to this day like probably like my favorite, not my favorite, but one of my favorite games, right? Like I feel like like Gen 2 Pokemon like had like a very nice atmosphere to it.
Yeah.
Like they had like that night day thing, and the color palette was like very
Even Heart Gold and Soul
pleasing.
Silver, the remakes of that
Yeah.
generation, are very good.
Yeah, no, they're
They weren't like cash grab remakes either. Like I feel like Omega,
those ones
Ruby and
felt
Sapphire,
way more like
they felt a little bit more cash grabby, but Heart Gold and Soul Silver felt good.
Yeah, like I go back and play that every now and then.
And Pokemon did remakes before remakes were like really like the big thing, right? You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
I feel like now like video
Yeah.
game remakes aren't that out there, but like when Fire Red Leaf Green came out or when Heart
Oh,
Gold Soul
people were
Silver came out.
so excited.
Yeah, it was like still like 2006, 2011 or whatever,
'cause
right?
I mean-
People weren't jaded on the idea.
Yeah,
of
and like
remakes,
that was a good kind of remake because you went from pixely black and white to
It's a
bringing in
big
all
jump,
the
but it's
colors and
good.
sprites
Yeah.
that they have now.
Yeah.
And you didn't have all the weird little blob sprites that you used to have.
It's not about the games themselves, but for the Game Boys, those classic see-through ones are my favorite.
Oh, yeah.
When you can get a controller like those,
Yeah.
like I think I have a
Yeah.
PlayStation controller that's see-through white, and like that, I'm like, yes.
I
Oh.
don't do those anymore.
Yeah.
Anytime anything releases with a see-through look on, I'm like,
Yeah.
give. Yeah.
Oh,
They also experimented with game franchises on the original Game Boy in a way that they didn't with the Nintendo, like Wario, like with the Wario games.
Yeah,
where,
WarioWare
Yes.
and stuff like that.
Yeah, where like Wario is like spooky Mario and is a
Yeah,
much
there
more
was like
interesting kind of like world in some ways.
It was
and-
like a Mario Land or whatever
Oh, yeah,
that was
that's
on
right,
Game
too,
Boy,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I remember very specifically going to a dentist's office, and they had a Game Boy with that game
Oh,
that you
yeah.
could play while like you're waiting in like the dentist chair.
Yeah.
So I just played the hell out of that game.
Or like the really unusual like Final Fantasy like Crystal, I forget what it's called actually. There's a
Yes!
whole series of Final
I
Fantasy
had that.
games
That
on the
was-
old Game Boy.
I
Final
lied.
Fantasy Legend, right?
Legends, yeah, sorry,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Legends.
I lied.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
probably the
Legend.
first Final Fantasy game I
Legend.
ever
Oh,
played.
look at that.
I know.
Oh
it's
yeah,
so
there they are. There's the beauty. But like, and those games are weird. Like, you could have a whole party of monsters, and they would become other monsters by like eating other monsters.
It's
It was
so
very
weird.
And you had like you didn't even like level up in those games. Like you just like
Yeah.
if you were like a human, I remember like you gained stats just by buying like items at the store.
Yeah.
Like
It was
your dudes are out here like buying steroids at every town you go to.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean?
I will
Like-
say that we're talking about how they experimented with these ones.
Yeah.
The accessories for it were also just
Yes.
the most comedic experiments.
Some of the
I saw this
ridiculous
GIF
stuff.
the other day. I don't know if you guys have watched Cyberpunk yet, the anime.
Yeah.
I have not. No,
Um,
I need to.
So the main character, he gets cyber augments
Yeah,
because it's
yeah.
Cyberpunk, right?
Yeah,
And like at one point they're like, you should probably slow down. He just augments himself a bunch, right?
Yeah.
Because he's Cyberpunk. It's the game series.
Yeah, yeah.
You do the same, right? And someone like took the soundbite of that and they overlaid it on somebody like slapping every freaking accessory on the Game Boy. And by the end, the Game Boy has like a yellow brick on the front,
Yeah.
giant gray one on the back,
Yeah, yeah, I
three
remember
more
the
pieces on the
magnifying
back,
glass.
a giant arm, a mirror, a telescope,
Light.
and it's just the most nonsensical looking monstrosity.
Amazing. Yeah, no, I love it, and then that's definitely like one of their first like, or the greatest like experiment outside of like when they originally started making consoles and they were just like we just throw games, let's figure stuff out. Game Boy just kind of their handhelds in general became where they like really, yeah,
Oh my God,
it's
yeah.
so
You're
crazy.
a weapon to surpass Metal Gear over there.
Oh my
Goddamn.
god,
Yeah.
it looks insane.
Oh my.
I forgot.
I think that's a Game Genie on the top
wow,
there.
yeah.
There's a light because it didn't have backlighting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember like playing my classic DS like in the car using
Yes!
the street lights.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
Everybody who grew up with those had that experience where you're in the
Squinting.
car and you're waiting for the next street light so you could actually see. You're like in the middle of fighting like the Elite Four and you're like,
Yeah, thank God this isn't timed.
Environmental hazards.
but you have to like wait and see like, oh man, did that attack do anything? Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
All right, what's
Yes,
next on
that's
the
a good
docket?
one. Yeah.
All right, last on my list. Damn, we're spending a lot of time on my list, guys.
Yeah, it's okay. Well, we're making it
Again,
happen.
this is what we kind of
Yeah,
expected.
that's true. Last on my list is Shenmue, which is a 1999
setting that up.
Dreamcast game.
Oh, I don't know this one.
It's actually slightly younger than me. It's probably the only game younger than me that's allowed to be on our list. Like December 29th, 1999,
Yeah.
as we figured out earlier. So it was released on the Game Cat. No, that's 3, man. Get out of here.
Yeah, I'm just
Yeah, we need one.
It was released on the Sega Dreamcast, but I actually didn't play it until the HD collection released over on Steam. It's a really nice game. Definitely like kind of one of the ones that you play more for like the atmosphere.
Mhm.
So like, if you don't know Shenmue, like it's essentially kind of like a detective simulator, life simulator kind of thing.
Yeah.
Essentially like it's more of like a 3D adventure game, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Okay. Yeah.
more like an open world setting with like
Yeah.
a third person view. The game is like very, very mysterious, and it's definitely like a little bit memey. I
There
wouldn't
we
be
go.
surprised if a lot of people like maybe
Oh.
they've seen like the clips on YouTube
Yeah,
of, like,
absolutely.
of like the kind of like weird jank dialogue where it's like
Mhm.
years ago I used to be Chinese or whatever. You know what I mean? Like
So
what happened,
weird.
buddy?
But see that travel agency over there? They get some Chinese customers. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, you're right. Absolutely, the dialogue is awkward.
Says
because
the Chinese
it's,
person.
It's definitely going to be some weird translation
Yeah.
things, right? It's like all your base are belong to us type
Yeah,
nonsense.
And like
Yeah.
the main character's voice is like flatter than a fucking soda that's been left out for 10 hours, you know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah,
such like a weird jank game, but I feel like so much of like its charm like is because of that jank, right? Like it
Yeah.
almost speaks to like kind of how would I put it? I don't know what it is, but like there's like this mystique when it comes to me with older games. Like I feel like as somebody that wasn't born
Growing up with
when a
it.
lot of this stuff came
Yeah.
out.
The before
or didn't,
times.
or didn't even grow up with it, like the before times. You know what I mean? Like I look back on it, like it's kind of like watching like an older movie and being like, huh, you know, like that's how it was back then.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's almost kind of interesting to like see what they were trying to convey
Oh yeah.
when they couldn't properly convey it. Because now with the game, like if you want to convey something, you can just convey it, right? Like,
Yeah,
you don't have
like
to
facial
make these-
expressions. You can actually
Yeah.
do facial
Yeah.
expressions rather
Yeah,
than.
but it was one of those things where, despite the limitations, like people got it, like the story and the mystery and like everything it built up, and like despite its very certain mechanics and certain bits not necessarily working super well,
Right.
like it's so well loved because of like it built an atmosphere. It had an amazing story.
It was the most immersive game I've ever played.
It's
like
amazing.
there are legit points in the game where it's like, all right, sailors would only be at this bar at 9 p.m. and like you just have to stare at your watch until 9 p.m. or just wander around
Yeah.
like a real person. You know what I mean? Like
It's funny.
like, you can't just skip.
You mentioned how like well loved it is. So I had to look it up because I wanted to confirm
Yeah,
this.
yeah, yeah.
So Shenmue 3, because they did 1 and 2, and then there was like
Yeah.
a 15-year gap
Yeah.
between 3. It got crowdfunded. It was such a bad crowdfunding thing too.
Oh no.
I think we wanted to talk about bad crowdfuding at one point.
Yes,
So
we'll talk about
we'll talk
crowdfunding
about that
in
one
a
and
bit.
that one.
That one's gonna appear for sure.
It's a wild story that we will bring up at a later date. But Shenmue 3 had a weird like
Yeah.
crowdfunding thing, and like that's just how well loved it was. Like it
Pretty much,
went
yeah.
great.
Well, it's
from a
I mean,
funding
it's like what
perspective.
happened with like Mighty Number 9 and whatnot.
Yeah.
It was just like there was so much nostalgia and people wanted to bring it back, and
Yeah.
but they just couldn't follow through with
Mhm.
it.
Yeah, yeah.
Like there's just what they did, unfortunately.
One game that apparently had a pretty good comeback is Secret of Monkey Island, the latest one.
Oh,
Looks
I've
really
heard,
nice.
yeah, which
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah.
Do you know like a lot of people were really mad about the art style? I didn't think like that.
I think it looks good. It's a cute art
I
style.
haven't seen
Yeah,
that.
it's like I don't expect it to have the exact same art style. If anything, I want it to be different.
Yeah.
after
Yeah,
all this
absolutely. All right, I think.
Yeah, I think I'm good.
What
are your three,
guys?
bud?
Stop
Oh.
listening from for a while.
So yeah, I'll simplify it a bit more. The 3 I chose were well, my first one, Super Mario World on the Super Nintendo.
Oh yeah.
Now, that's not the one that it was initially a completely different game that they reskinned, right?
No, that's
that was
Mario
Ultimate
2.
for the
Yeah.
old Nintendo.
Which
Yeah,
is
yeah.
a funny
So-
story in its own
Also,
right.
Yeah.
also
The
incidentally,
most-
the instruction manual for Mario 2 is weird.
Well, yeah, because it was such a.
Okay,
So it's great.
this
I,
one's amazing.
yeah,
I
yeah.
love this game.
That
Yeah, yeah.
So I grew up with an NES. I got an NES. It probably wasn't when it was released, but it was pretty early on. And my first game I ever played was the original Super Mario Bros.
I think I'm in the same boat. I think that's right around like my first console was like me and my brother playing this, and then like
Okay.
Excite Bike.
Yeah. So
Kind of.
I grew up. I played Super Mario. I played Super Mario 2. I played Super Mario 3, and eventually, or no, I didn't play 3 until I got a Super Nintendo, and the Super Nintendo had Mario All Stars, which had like the
had all
mix.
of them. Yeah.
But I got this game, and this game just blew everything I played out of the water.
Yeah.
I mean, it still holds up.
Yeah, and
It's
there's
such
a-
an amazing
There's a
game.
brightness to it that's just really
It's
contagious.
it's colorful. It's easy. It's easy to play, but all the secrets
Yeah,
are
I mean-
actually like require skill to get done.
This art style and the gameplay of it held up so well that it's literally one of the modes
Yeah.
in Mario Maker.
Yeah,
is
yeah,
this
yeah.
exact thing.
And the only reason that this game is not more expensive to buy is because it sold so many back in the day. They
Yeah.
made so many copies of it that it's just everywhere.
It's not rare. It's
Well,
not
I
rare.
think
Yeah.
it came with every Super Nintendo, didn't it? It was kind of like part of the.
It was
It
probably,
did. It did have
It was
a
probably like the
release
Wii
thing,
Sports
yeah.
of
Yeah,
the Super
yeah.
Nintendo.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I mean, it was a hell of a purchase. Like
Yeah.
that by itself
Yeah.
made having a Super Nintendo worth it.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I've replayed this game so many times.
That's impressive. Just even the quality here, you can even see that they got shading in the bits.
Yeah.
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 And I'm like,
It's-
that's really good for what
Yeah.
was this, 32-bit?
Yep. 32
Yeah,
bit.
it looks so good, and it introduced so many different mechanics, and it
Was
introduced
this the one that
Yoshi.
introduced Yoshi? I was about
Yeah,
to ask.
yeah,
Yeah.
This is where Yoshi first appeared.
Not Luigi though.
No,
Luigi wasn't
Luigi
even
came up
necessary.
earlier.
Yeah,
yeah.
Well,
Luigi
because
was back.
technically Luigi was in
He was
one.
just player 2.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he was
yeah.
the green
Yeah.
player too.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
One thing they also introduced was what I really liked about it was like the secret exits in every level.
Yeah.
I think that was like great
Yeah.
replayability.
In terms of like level design, that was kind of new and exciting. Hadn't
Yeah.
been seen
Yeah,
that
like,
before in other games.
On like the haunted houses always
Yeah.
had like multiple ways to get out, and like whether some of them you wouldn't do any progression, some of them would take you to like a secret spot,
Yeah, yeah.
and yeah, it was, and it had like the secret switches and things.
Yeah.
Right.
Which Mario game introduced the Koopalings?
That was 3.
Three.
Okay.
Yeah, 3. Yeah, they're a mini boss at the end of each kind of.
Right around the same. Like that was right after this, right? That was the next. Well, it went
No,
2 and
3
then
was
2.
right before this
3 was
one.
before.
3 before.
There was
There's
only
actually
Nintendo.
Okay.
there's not a lot connecting to it, but as a little Easter egg is there's this crashed ship outside of the final area.
Oh yeah.
And it does say, like, this is I think it's, like, in the actual manual,
Yeah.
where it
Okay.
says that this is one of the crashed ships from Mario 3.
Oh,
Which is just such a
interesting.
funny thing
Yeah.
that they used to
Yeah.
do with the manuals because, like,
Yeah. Yeah,
they used to have, like, all the
So much
narrative just in
lore.
the manual
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they couldn't put it in the game.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or-
there's no, like,
or-
text scrolls for a lot of stuff.
Or
so.
other things like I was playing Star Tropics for ordinary Nintendo, and the game is telling me to like put the letter in water. And I'm like, what are you talking about? It was like
Yeah.
you had to put the letter that came in the instruction
Yeah.
manual in water to get a radio signal
Yeah.
code.
Yeah.
And I'm like, they don't do that. They can't do that anymore. There's
Yeah,
no
that's not a
connection.
thing you can do, and I love
I mean,
it.
even in the same vein of, like, games that were doing, like, sneaky shit.
Mhm.
Metal Gear.
Yeah.
With, Psycho Mantis, that's like the
Oh,
most
yeah,
classic
yeah,
thing
yeah.
where you
Free-
read your
yeah.
damn memory
Oh,
card.
that was so
And
cool.
even
So you
in
like
Metal Gear
Suikoden?
Solid, like they also had that thing with the instruction manual where it was like literally like, oh, it's on like the back of the
Yeah, wasn't one of
box
the
or
codes that
whatever.
you had to, like,
Yeah, you had to like
radio
it was like a
thing?
radio thing, and like I remember
Yeah,
playing it,
yeah.
and I was like, back in the manual, the hell are they talking about? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like this is
Yeah.
a thing?
And then there's ones where you have to plug the controller in the second player slot or the
Yeah.
fourth
Yeah,
player
yeah,
slot
yeah.
instead of the first and stuff.
Yeah,
It-
yeah.
Yeah,
That was specifically like a Metal Gear thing. Wasn't
Yeah.
it, originally?
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, I would love to see more games. Like, obviously, you can't do it with, like, digital games,
Yeah.
but I would love it if they would incorporate sneaky... Like, I think there are games that have
Taking
done this,
advantage of the
sneaky
medium.
stuff in, like, the menus or, like, the main screen.
Yeah.
Like, hide stuff away that you have to, like, find
Okay,
or get
so
hints about.
mild. Okay. Just look up Bravely Default. That's it.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
that's
know,
a good
yeah,
one.
yeah,
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
We're not gonna say it, but everyone just play Bravely Default.
We
Very,
love Bravely
really
Default.
good. Really good. The
Okay.
menu does a really cheeky thing. So good.
Such a nice touch. But
Alright,
yeah,
what's game
this
2?
is by far and always will be my favorite Mario game ever.
I mean, that's fair.
Yeah.
It holds up so well, too.
It's-
It's not like one where it's like, oh, it's my favorite, but if I was going to go play it, I'd play something else. It's like, you could literally just pick this up and play it tomorrow, and it would be,
absolutely.
it'd still feel great.
On the subject of like Mario World, one big debate I see a lot is like, which one is the better game, Mario 3 or Mario World? I just want to hear you guys' take on this. Like, I
World.
want to
World.
get the head-to-head right here.
Yeah. Super Mario 3 was a lot of fun and had a lot of neat stuff in it, but World was just... It plays so well.
It also looks a lot nicer.
Yeah, like
No offense to 3.
Yeah.
The jump between this to World,
Yeah, the
just
original and the remake.
The crispness of the
Yeah.
colors and stuff like that is so strong. Which, I mean, yeah, you're
Yeah.
jumping a full console
yeah.
generation, but like,
In
World holds up a lot
Yeah.
better than
Yeah.
this one.
Yeah.
Generally, I'd say World, but one thing that I do think that like 3 did that World didn't do as dramatically was the intense variety of the zones you were in.
That's
the
fair.
ice
Yeah.
world felt
Yep.
very different. The cactus world felt very different.
Yeah.
And you still have some of that in Mario World,
Right.
but like
Yeah.
I don't feel like they were nearly as distinct
Yeah.
in terms of
I
zones.
do think it helps that
You know,
because of the premise
Yeah.
behind the game,
Yeah.
the fact that 3 was like a stage play,
Yeah.
you get a
Yeah,
lot
yeah.
more just like
You could do
don't
whatever
have
you
to do
want.
a
You don't have to
cohesive
explain
world.
it.
Yeah. Or even some of the aesthetics, like in the last zones in Super Mario Brothers 3, right? And you're going through this kind of like hellscape.
Yeah.
And in order to, you don't know which like level you're going to land on, and this hand just comes up and pulls you down.
Yeah, I know. It's so
that,
good.
That was
That's
pretty
spooky.
metal.
Okay, which Mario game was it? Was all a dream?
Oh, that was
2.
2. That was 2.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's because it wasn't even originally to
Yeah.
be a
No, it
Mario
wasn't.
game, and so they just reskinned it and like, well, now it's just a dream.
It's like the
Yeah,
CDI Zelda
Yeah.
games where they weren't planning on being like Zelda
Yeah.
games
Yeah,
or anything
yeah,
else, and
yeah.
then they're just like, slap a Zelda skin on it and
Yeah.
sell it on
Yeah,
the
which is
CDI.
freaking
And it's like,
ridiculous.
oh god, that looks like
Yeah, yeah.
Except this one actually turned out well. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Thank
Yeah,
God.
2
What?
was
You don't
actually
like
still
the
pretty fun.
CDI?
Well, isn't that even how like Mario started? It was originally going to be like a Popeye game that they lost the rights
Yeah.
to.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah,
there's
yeah.
a long history and tradition. Of
Yeah,
that.
it's well, I mean, yeah, I can't remember exactly how that helped, but Mario originally is from like the Donkey Kong games. That is
Yeah,
his
yeah,
original
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
And then I can't remember they had him.
I don't
based
think he had a
off of-
name either. I think it was just
Yeah.
Slum. It was
It was
Jumpman.
Jumpman.
Jumpman,
Jumpman.
yeah.
There was
Voodoo
also like a
Jumps.
Wrecking Crew thing that was kind of a reference to them. at one point.
Yeah, like he appeared in
Yeah.
Wrecking Crew.
Yeah,
or
yeah.
something.
Yeah.
Okay, what's game 2?
2 would be Sonic the Hedgehog 2 for Genesis.
Oh.
Sonic the Hedgehog 2.
Now, the Sonic games in general, I loved. And I mean, I get when people. Oh, yes, yeah. No, you have to go Genesis, or
There we go.
Okay.
Cursed images.
yeah. The so I grew up with the games. I adored them. I get why some people aren't as fond of them because when you think about a lot of like it's about the speed, and then you get to stages where you can't go
Right,
as fast and
yeah.
whatnot.
These
But-
were good though. They were
They were
fun.
good,
yeah.
I remember playing
Yeah.
this game in like nights.
Yes, and now and Sonic 3, Sonic and Knuckles, whatnot were really fun. Sonic 2 will always be my favorite and have a special place because it was such an upgrade from the first one.
Yeah.
And the introduction of special stages and Supersonic was so iconic.
I mean,
and
didn't that
so
one
good.
introduce Metal as well, or no?
No,
But Super.
Metal Sonic showed up for the first.
Wasn't it
time.
in like a
CD,
CDI
CD,
game?
yeah.
Okay.
Because Sonic and Knuckles introduced Knuckles, and
Yeah.
Sonic, or no, or was did
2 had like this robot that was like Sonic at the end, but it wasn't
Yeah.
Metal
Oh, yeah,
Sonic.
it was-
They're
yeah,
two
but
distinct
it
things,
probably like
yeah.
influenced like what
Yeah.
became
Yeah.
Metal Sonic.
So, let me ask you.
Yeah,
This is cool to you too, right?
Yeah, no,
Oh,
that's-
that's-
Like that was
I love
fucking
that.
sick.
That's
Yeah.
such a nice touch. I
An
love
homage.
that.
Because the Sonic fandom goes hard.
Oh,
Yeah.
Frontier drops in what, 2 weeks, 3 weeks here?
Yeah, I'm gonna look at it, but I think this is the first Sonic game in a long time I've actually, when it's been shown to me initially, I'm like, okay, I'm interested in this one.
I mean, Sonic Colors apparently went really good.
Yeah, Sonic Colors is apparently amazing. I haven't played it myself, but
I played Sonic Colors at release, and I do remember liking it back then. I've actually gone back to it, and I don't think it's quite as good as it was made out to be at the time. I think at the time it was just like...
Because what was the other game after Sonic Colors?
Generations, but before Colors
Yeah.
was like... It was like the era where like people were still recovering from
Sonic.
from Sonic 06.
2005? Oh, 06, sorry.
So like anything like that was competent was like, oh my god, good
Yeah.
job. This is the best
Yeah.
game ever. Oh my god.
See, I'm not allowed Sonic opinions because I liked Sonic and the Black Knight.
Oh.
I don't know how you could,
yeah.
but
Because I like my main experience with Sonic was Sonic, not racing. It was Sonic
Riders.
Riders.
Yeah.
So my favorite Sonic game at the time was Sonic Riders. So playing
Fair.
Sonic and the Black Knight, where it's almost it's functionally a rhythm game.
Oh, interesting.
Like,
Yeah.
because you're basically just waiting for the ring to hit the right spot, and then you go dash, dash,
Yeah,
dash,
yeah.
dash, and like later on when you get really good at it, and you're speedrunning the whole stage to try, like the whole game in 2 hours to try and unlock Jet, and you're like 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2.
I will say in how it plays, it holds up better than Secret of the Ring.
Oh well,
Because
absolutely.
that's probably straight up the worst Sonic game.
I mean, like, yeah. It's
Well,
pretty bad. It's
in
definitely
terms of
bad.
like gameplay,
yeah.
Sonic 06 is bad for many reasons.
And Sonic and the Werehog is kind of weird too.
That's
Like,
weird.
the
It's
Sonic
not-
gameplay part is great. The Werehog stuff is jank as hell,
It's just like God of War ripoff
Yeah.
for no reason.
and not a good one.
It's
No,
not
not-
even like bad. It's
Wow.
more just like you kind of have to just stop and then hit the X button for like 10 minutes and then go back to the good stuff.
Yeah,
right? Like,
it's just not fun.
This is like half a good game, half a bad game.
Which
right?
is why I am excited about the Frontiers, because open world where you can just run around. Like if they can capture the feeling of speed.
I just
I'll be
remember looking
so
at the
happy.
the cinematic, and I was like, first off, it looks very empty, which I mean that's fine. Zelda was very empty too, but you have to make the travel fun. So
Yeah.
I want to go fast.
Yes, Sonic. You have to go fast and
There's a
have
theme.
options as well. If I can't spin dash, I'm gonna be so mad. But yeah, I'm curious about it. But yeah, I mean, I'd say Sonic 2 is probably my favorite one just because of like the supersonic stuff, and then like you learn about the debug codes, and then you can just be supersonic whenever you want because you can get 50 rings. But then of course later Sonic Adventure 2 came out, and I know many people have various opinions on it, and I get when people say that they're not great games, but
Screw them. Sonic
which one?
Adventure 2 is the greatest.
Sonic
I-
Adventure 2 Battle is my favorite
I-
Sonic game, like
it's-
my actual favorite Sonic game, because
Yeah.
like the gameplay was fun. They introduced so many iconic characters, like
Yeah,
all of
it's-
the Shadow, Rogue, all that shit was in that
yeah,
one.
it's, I can see, because like certain things are quite janky in like certain
Sure.
stages and whatnot, and I get what people don't like about them, but I had
It's such a
so much fun
Oh,
with it.
even the Chow Garden stuff is really fun.
I love the Chow Garden stuff.
I'm genuinely shocked we don't have a Chow Garden
There
mode.
hasn't been any Chow Garden stuff since the re-release of
They
Sonic
could print
Adventure
so
2.
much money just by making a phone app that's a Chow
Yeah,
Garden.
exactly. That's what I was about to say. Like,
It's
they
like,
could literally
where's,
make a game.
where's my Pikmin go? Where's my Pokemon go but for Chow Garden?
Yeah, just
Crazy, man.
let me raise the Chow and do their like races and battles
Yeah.
and things like that. That was so fun.
It was such a good time, too. Okay.
Miss it. And then my final game I chose was Mega Man X,
Mega Man X.
because that is probably just one of the best games ever made, and at least like the Super Nintendo, it is absolutely the best game. Like, in terms of like an actual like a 2D scrolling platformy shooty game.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
This design do you like this design more than classic?
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
I
like
mean,
the red dot?
Classic was definitely for its own thing. Because it was like, you know, it's an initial robot based off of Astro Boy. And then, like, you know, X comes out and he's like, yeah, he's meant to be sleeker and stronger than original was.
And a lot more human.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, because that was their whole thing, was they wanted the Reploids, he wanted them to be more human and to get along with society.
I thought it was also interesting the way in which all of the boss robots were kind of like they had some sort of infrastructural role. There was this kind of like interesting reflection on technology as like made for social goods.
That was
but then
always the
twisted
narrative in all of them, right?
Yeah, but like it was like
They really went all out next, right? Because it's like this guy was like, oh man, like he's in charge of like transporting like this cargo or whatever, right?
Yeah. You got really into it.
It had clear theming of each of the selections of robot masters, right? Like they were all what, animals? I think?
Animals, I think that was the first one where they actually made them more animal-like because I don't think they had that.
Yeah, they were the robot masters.
Frog
there
Man.
was Snake Man as well. Okay, so there were a few, but it wasn't like.
But they
the
were
tr-
still
the default.
humanoid.
Yeah.
They like Cobra Man or Snake Man was. He had like the snake helmet, but he was still like humanoid.
It was also weird because like in the original ones, like what was it, like 1 to 9 before X?
Yeah.
In all of those, whenever there'd be like an animalistic robot master, it was always slightly strange. They always stood out from the cast in a weird way. Because like you've got Gutsman, you've got Pyro, and like man who lived construction worker and fireman and stuff like that.
This furry
Bubble Man, and then like this random like fur, But then in X, they're like, we're gonna just make it consistent, which I thought was nice.
And it led to a lot of like fun designs and things that because the other thing too is it really expanded on what they could do. Because they weren't just people who were shooting various things or throwing things. Now you had Sting Chameleon who would camouflage, go through, and he would attack with his tongue and shoot spikes out of his back.
How do you spell Chow?
C-H-A-O.
And the cool thing about Mega Man X is like we think about Mega Man X and we think of like there are 8 games in the Mega Man X series, right? Like X1 to X8. When you really think about it, like 0 and then ZX are in a way like just X games. You know what I mean? Like they're obviously like a bit different, but like I feel like X is so great because like it spawned like another amazing series, and then another good series. It was alright.
So I'm stealing this a bit from Ego Raptor's Awesome series because he did one on Mega Man X, but I agree with it so wholeheartedly with just how amazing Mega Man X was at introducing the players to their mechanics. Like everything about that intro stage taught you everything you needed to know about the basic mechanics of the game, and like generally without even dying unless you like really just like did not try pushing all the buttons.
Core concept.
I don't want to quote it, but is that the one where it's like you take about 24 eggs, put them in a bowl, mix the out of them? Is that one?
I think so.
Yeah.
Riding on cars. And it was such a like. And I think that's what really...
Zero was in the first X, right?
Yeah. He was.
And which he's the first the first time you get a different playable character in Mega Man, right?
Well, he wasn't playable until 3, actually.
Yeah, he isn't playable until 3.
But he's still the first playable character you get besides Mega Man, right? Because even Rock and Roll weren't playable.
I think so. I don't think Proto Man was playable either.
There might have been... I think there was like another Mega Man game. I don't know if it came out before X, though. Because there was Mega Man and Bass.
Yeah.
And you could play as Bass in that game.
Guess we're not counting Rockman Soccer, which is a weird aberration of the series.
I did play that. That is a different thing. Also very fun, and I still own that as well because it's actually pretty good. Fun thing about Zero though is originally when they were making the Mega Man X, Zero actually was going to be the Mega Man X, but they decided that he was too different looking. And
he does look like an anime boy.
Yeah. But then instead of making him making him X, they made X, who looks more like original Mega Man, and made Zero a secondary character, an ally, which I'm so glad they did because holy crap, Zero was such a.
I will say, as cool as I think Zero is, he does fall into the same place that I think like Cerberus and
Yeah.
Shadow do, which
Well, yeah.
is just like an edgy version of the
Yeah.
main character.
Yeah,
shows
but
up.
his-
definitely that.
like,
The Mega Man
everything
series
after.
always had that kind of like not
Well,
always,
Photo Man was there
Yeah,
all the
that kind
time.
of like
Yeah.
shadowy ally who you don't know if they're necessarily a good guy or
Yeah.
a bad guy and is kind
Well,
of
the
doing
nice
their
thing
own
about
thing.
Zero was like he was just. We knew he was an ally
Yeah,
from the
yeah,
start.
that's true.
The only time it became worrisome, or when they started introducing like the Sigma virus and
Yeah,
all that
yeah,
stuff
yeah,
later.
Yeah.
But contained just within Mega Man X, Zero was such a like in the original Awesome series thing Eagle Raptor pointed out. It's like, yeah, this is like he beats Vile like it's nothing.
Mhm.
So you're like, wow, this is like Mega Man's friend, but he's like
Yeah,
Way
yeah.
better.
way above.
He's the coolest guy
and
ever.
this is like
man.
how you
Yeah,
can
yeah.
you can aim to be
And way
this
of
guy.
framing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then what happens at the end, which, whatever, who cares about spoilers for
It's
Mega
all-
Man
yeah,
X?
it's like
If you
20
haven't
years
played
old.
it yet, go play it. It's super fun. But like when Zero died, like
Because that's like a big
that
one
was
as well.
insanely
Yeah.
emotional.
Yeah.
And
Like,
that's in the first one?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and
So-
because he sacrifices himself by blowing up Vile's armor, so X could have a chance to fight
very
him.
vividly
He pulls a
remember
Piccolo,
He pulls a Piccolo.
holds the guy still so he can get blasted in the chest.
Or no, it more like a Chaozu.
That actually works.
Yeah, you just like
That's
grab
so
one
much
and
worse.
blows himself up.
That's significantly more embarrassing.
I don't know if
Yeah,
you guys are
because although he actually did something, so good for him.
Chaozu just self-destructs every 3 episodes.
Yeah, of course.
Chaozu! What's a Chaozu?
It's like, look, it's a Pokemon.
So,
Yeah,
well-
Mega Man X just straight up one of my favorite games ever.
before we switch off this topic, how do you feel about Axel?
I mean, he wasn't bad in 8. Or I'll give him that. Like,
It was just that game, when the original, it's just that game, that transition to that style was really bad, really awkward, and the introduction of Axel did not help.
Yeah.
It was.
Wasn't he also kind of grating as a
The English voice acting was not good.
Because he was a little whiny, wasn't he?
He gave me flashbacks to what was that kid's name from the Indiana Jones movie?
short
Short
stuff?
Short round?
Short round.
Short
Yeah,
round.
Shorty.
That actor is in Everything Everywhere All at Once. It was his first time acting in a long time. He's great in
He's
it.
great. I don't blame him. I blame the people who decided to make him that character.
Yeah, just a grating little kid.
But it was very much that vein to me. Like he was just like I was just like listening to him talk and was like, shut up. Don't need you.
You're not cool. Bring back X. Alright,
Yeah,
then-
why is X in the fucking background? Get out of here.
Why don't you get him to like half the game? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
God
it's
damn.
like, ugh.
Okay, what are we talking about now?
All right, so
Alright, man.
bit of a tonal change.
Yeah, nope, go for it.
So one of the things I really like about retro games is when they were really kind of exploring and trying to understand even what a game was, right? And there was like the political debates, legal debates.
Yeah.
So I'm actually going to start off with pinball.
Because those debates are finished, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
They're
Yeah.
completely finished.
We're all set now.
There are no debates around loot boxes in
Yeah,
video
oh, yeah,
games
oh, yeah.
at all.
Yeah, yeah. But I feel like that's the difference because that's around
That's
like
another thing.
That's about like gambling and
I know.
certification and
Oh.
so on. But like pinball is interesting because of its cultural continuity
Yeah.
with other kinds of games, right? Like I remember playing like 3D space pinball for Windows
Yeah.
95.
Oh,
in
yeah.
the science room in my old junior high school.
Yeah.
Was a thing, right? But when you think about like what pinball,
I think that's it. That's it right there.
Yeah.
The next one over, Gavin.
This one?
To the right.
Oh, this one.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
no, okay,
yeah,
that
the
was
one on the
yeah,
computer.
yeah.
Even I recognize
I
that.
can still hear those sounds.
Oh, it's like playing Chip.
Yeah.
Chip's Adventure?
But,
or Chip's Quest?
But the thing about pinball is it's quite an old technology, right? It's not something we think about when we think video games necessarily, like in the original instantiation of it. When you think about like what a video game is, arguably it's like it's an interactive narrative in a kind of virtual world. But like the definitions of a virtual world are kind of loose.
Yeah.
And it's this older technology that still emulates a lot of those features, and importantly, has a lot of the same cultural baggage historically. Like I remember seeing pictures of like 1940s in like pinball arcades where they were like they wanted to keep kids out of them. They were corrupting our youths.
yeah.
They were like getting all smoking and drinking to make them violent in
if
the
they
pinball
could only
holes.
know.
Yeah. Look at the ball bounce. It's like, now we're just like playing God of War, ripping dudes apart.
Well, actually, it's funny you should mention. I remember even like some pinball machines that were like about like the ball was a bullet in a human body. Like it was actually like the narrative. Because there was a narrative, even in material pinball machines, right? There's a narrative embedded in
They-
what your
deep
ball
pinball.
is
They
doing.
had to up what the pinball
was doing, right? So there's still
Represented,
that kind of narrative component, which
That's
is really
fun.
interesting and striking. But also even in the ways in which, we talk about like video games in society, and we feel so much, at least there's a cultural inertia to feel more culpable for what you do in a video game and what a video game is making you do because of that interactive element, right? The whole do video games make people violent? What's the relationship to drone warfare? These sorts of things.
I don't know.
But that goes back even further back to pinball, actually, to this and the Vietnam War, actually. There was this Operation Igloo White, where they were actually setting up a whole bunch of sensors across the Vietnam jungle that would actually call in airstrikes. And even though there was a pilot in the plane, the pilot could fly the plane but wouldn't dictate when the airstrike was happening.
Oh.
And one of the interesting things about this was actually the pilots themselves in later interviews described it as like playing pinball. Literally, we hooked the Ho Chi Minh Trail up like an arcade hall pinball machine every night and turned it on.
Oof.
And it was how they conceptualized their activity and the removal from their activity in relationship to pinball, which is quite a striking thing, I think, in terms of this relationship to. And I'm not saying and this goes throughout when we can talk about it more, violence, video games, but also I think there's a lot of social potential in video games and that interactivity as well, right? To put yourself in other people's shoes. It's not on my main list, but I remember playing the Dragon Age Origins and starting off as a caseless dwarf. It's a tattoo thing. And just everyone's treating you like garbage when you have that origin. But I was also a rogue because I like being able to hide. And everyone's expecting me to steal from them.
Yeah.
And they're all being mean to me, and I'm just like, you know what, F it, I am going to steal from you. And I'm like, oh, wait a second, I've learned something here.
No.
Yeah. That's an amazing part of video games is just how much you, if it's well done, how much you feel.
Anytime I play Mass Effect and I have to pick the Renegade option, I'm like, I don't want to do it.
Yeah, right. And that's a big thing too, right? Because so many people, when we're given that choice, actually, our power fantasy is being able to help everyone.
Yeah, I'm just I get there are people who go for the bad options, but there are so few people. I think there's more people who tend to go for the good option first.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely.
And Undertale is another really big one.
No, I only do get Renegade points in Mass Effect so that I can headbutt the Krogan because I feel like that's part of the culture. And it's
I don't mind being a little mean here and there. I want to be sassy or a jerk to certain people. But overall, I like my choices to be.
Yeah, and actually, Undertale is a really interesting example of that as well. But I just also want to kind of talk about again, the politics of video games and interactivity. I was telling Gavin before this. All right, I think maybe all of you. I don't know what is time. Video games are only declared legally protected as art in the U.S. by a Supreme Court case in 2011.
Yeah.
Which is actually based on a challenge from California that was actually signed by Arnold Schwarzenegger about violent video games in 2005.
So good.
And one of the striking things, to be fair, some of the games they were mentioning are absolutely reprehensible games.
There are some bad ones,
there was a particularly after the Columbine high school shootings, there was this company that did Postal 2 that tried to cash in on the outrage of that kind of phenomenon.
Not cool.
And to be fair, that is abhorrent and gross, but it also exists in that space of just exploitation and taking advantage, and that's not intrinsic to video games.
Yeah, we have an entire genre called exploitation movies, so...
Pretty much,
So that was the thing. So within my lifetime, video games were, at least in the States, legally declared art. And in part it was because of the tension from it was from this interactive element. And I guess I'm just going to kind of segue a little bit then into my third choice there. I want to talk about Metal Gear Solid as well.
We brought it up already.
Yeah.
One thing I will say that's very funny about the whole controversy around video games as a whole is the fact that D&D had the same thing and
huge.
The satanic panic.
Yeah.
around
Oh,
D&D.
yeah.
And it's
so
so
much.
funny because it's just
It's like Reefer
have you
Madness.
met a D&D player?
Yeah.
They are the least intimidating
Who's-
people I know.
Who's that? Tom Hanks, Mazes and Monsters.
Yeah.
That was the Reefer Madness of the satanic panic for D&D.
What- There was that, I don't think it was called Mazes and Monsters. There was this, I can't remember where I saw this. I think I might have been watching it on JonTron or something. There was this movie about Dungeons and Dragons.
I do remember seeing that too, yeah.
These two girls who are these really good Christian girls at the school, and then they're convinced to go to this party and hey, want to try Dungeons and Dragons?
There's cocaine or something.
But then it actually ends with an actual satanic ritual and the devil showing up or something. It was the most.
It was the thing. It was
ridiculous thing.
like the chick tracks in those comics that were all straight up oh, if you play D&D, you'll end up in a pagan suicide cult.
I feel like
So
the most
ridiculous.
it took till Stranger Things season 4 for us to actually get a pretty accurate representation of what a D&D Stranger Things was probably the first time we really got D&D and media looking
Yeah.
like
Like
what
D&D.
Yeah.
Maybe even a little more than what D&D is, because they're all, like sometimes they dress up and stuff like that. It's
Yeah.
like
I mean, that all depended on your
Yeah,
group.
yeah, I know, but like
Yeah,
your
yeah.
average group is just a bunch of nerds sitting around a table vibing,
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
But I mean, sometimes, like, it's
But like the
it's
DM and stuff like that,
so
like,
close to being like an
it's-
actual
yeah,
D&D
yeah.
game.
far more accurate.
Yeah.
Even the main character, like Eddie, he's fronting so hard at trying to be like this edgy metalhead type of like
Yeah.
thing, like the Satanic Panic
Yeah.
persona.
Yeah.
He's fronting as
He
that.
wants to be that,
but he's not. He's such a soft boy.
yeah.
One of the things that I think was interesting, though, to come out of the Satanic Panic and its relationship to video games was its effect on the language of the Avatar. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but Ultima as a game series, relatively old, super pixely,
Yeah,
if you're
yeah.
like Ultima Quest of the Avatar.
Oh my lord.
I've heard of it.
Yeah, this is, I forget exactly when it came out. I think this was in like the late 80s, maybe even mid 80s.
Yeah.
Yeah, like there were some Christian groups like being like, oh, it's so violent, it's so violent, and it's so pixely. But the game designer, like receiving all of the Satanic Panic hate, was
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
you know what? Actually, maybe they do have a little bit of a point. Why, when we're creating these virtual worlds where we can do anything, are we always structuring it around murder? Like even like not taking into account
Never played
like
Harvest Moon.
the violence. Well, yeah, I mean that wasn't a thing at that point. But he actually watched like a Discovery Channel documentary that talked about whether or not Jesus was actually like a Hindu avatar. And like was like, well, what if we could make our character like this avatar of virtue to like actually embody all of these other traits? And so it actually had, like, it was one of the earliest ways of trying to encode a more complicated morality system in a game. And because of the widespread kind of influence of that game, it kind of introduced into gaming language the language of who is your avatar, what kind of avatar do you want to embody, which is now part of the kind of like general lexicon of gaming, which I thought was really cool, and is indirectly kind of came out of the response, the gaming's response to the Satanic Panic.
Yeah, I mean, and it's really cool because, I mean, yeah, you just take the controversy and you don't necessarily give in, but it's like, just adapt and like create something new. It's like, because it gives great ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and again, like Undertale and all of those things, it really kind of like take advantage of the fact that yes, it is a game, and you will relate to it differently than any other kind of story. Like in a movie, you can disconnect from all the characters, and it's a lot easier to have kind of like meta commentary on what they're doing. When you're asking a player to do something, they're creating a very different relationship.
I mean, that's
to
why
it.
Link and Mario were basically silent for so long, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially Link.
You can put yourself
Because
on
that was
the
the whole idea, is
character.
that he's like a blank slate for you to insert yourself
Yeah, yeah.
onto.
Right.
It's the same thing as most like anime protagonists. They're all
Yeah.
the most basic blank slate.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Dude
All
has
those
the-
visual
yeah,
novel
yeah.
characters and whatnot.
Personality of
Yeah.
a paper cup,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
No.
Okay, so Metal Gear.
So Metal Gear was interesting because again, it's at this time when like video games are becoming explicitly political, right? Like the first Metal Gear, honestly, was on the ordinary Nintendo and was incredibly hard to play. I admit that I did not get very far in the first Metal Gear, but when it came to Metal Gear Solid, the first one is explicitly about like Cold War anxieties, about like genetics and like, the ethics of genetic modification, nature versus nurture, genetic destiny, a lot of these kind of like themes, right? But also like structurally, it was really interesting, as we already talked about with like Psycho Mantis' character, right? Trying to take advantage of what is unique to video games that you can actually then play around with the player in these very unique ways and actually make them kind of like feel more culpable and connected to the game world, even like play around with them, right? Like I think this was around the same time as like Book of Eternal Darkness, which really messes around with your head and takes advantage
That's a good one.
and takes advantage of the fact that games are a different kind of medium than movies or whatnot.
So there's one game that I've seen that has really experimented with stuff that like this, and it's called Spec Ops the Line.
Okay, I haven't heard that one.
Okay, so quick aside. So you know how Metal Gear, you were talking about how like it really makes you like feel capable and stuff like that. So Spec Ops the Line is I didn't need the name of the dude. So Spec Ops the Line, this game is so interesting. So as you're playing through it, your character slowly starts to like have like maybe not PTSD, but he's getting like actual war trauma and stuff like that to him, and it's like. I don't know what that is, but like it gets so dark, and it's one of those games where it's like you feel so bad by the end of it. Like it's one of those games where they try to make you feel guilty about your actions in the universe, and It's,
I mean,
it's a very cool way.
Yeah, because one of the things I love about the Metal Gear Solid is it's explicitly a War series games that's very much anti-war.
Yeah.
And even in Metal Gear Solid 2, like it's explicit that actually one of the ways that the soldiers are being trained is in VR, and it actually like was one of the first games to really problematize VR training for soldiers and how much that enables. And I think like for me, it came to a head in Metal Gear Solid 2.
I agree, yeah.
In a really explicit way that again connects to drone warfare and a lot of things we're seeing nowadays. But funny story. So I was staying up ridiculously late with a friend in high school playing Metal Gear Solid 2. Like it was like 4 or 5 in the morning. We'd been playing the game together for like 10 hours or something.
Yeah.
You know, like a neurotypical amount of time to spend doing anything.
Yeah.
And there's again, I guess Metal Gear Solid 2 spoilers. There's
Yeah.
there's this there's
Half-Life.
this stage in the game where like you're always talking to these people on the radio, right?
Yeah.
And so the stage in the game where you're going down this elevator shaft, and it like things start to get weird, and the pictures of the characters start to look a little bit more like skulls, but just in a subtle way. It's kind of like fading in and out in a little way. And then you're like, the person you're talking to on the radio is like, do you even know what's real anymore? You've been playing the game too long, and then you get this.
The game just starts gaslighting you.
Yeah,
exactly.
it
Yeah,
does.
Then you get this game over screen, except for saying mission failed. It says fission mailed, and you still have to play because it gets this tiny little screen on the left hand side, which you still actually have to keep on fighting.
Yeah.
In that stage, and it's like you've been like war is a video game to you. Do you even know what's real anymore? Do you even know what you're doing? Do you even know like there are other people in the world? Like it starts really kind of like very explicitly kind of pushing all of those buttons, but in a very thoughtful way.
I don't think any
from
game
the
has
medium.
really gone as deep into like any game franchise at least has really gone into deep of like the mechanics around games themselves as the Metal Gear ones.
really using them.
Kojimo's like
Is he doing a TV
He's
show
the
right
peak
now?
of it,
yeah.
He's doing a
I
TV
don't
show
know.
now, I think.
I wouldn't be surprised.
You know-
Kojima's just crazy.
Yeah, I mean, also true. But
Is he the guy who did Death Stranding?
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay, yeah, I think he's doing a TV show right now.
Oh, interesting. Well, I think Undertale plays as part of that legacy in some
Yeah,
ways.
Undertale
Yeah.
is one of the best examples
Yeah,
of
yeah.
that.
Because like you couldn't do that in any other medium.
I feel like that one less teases you about the idea of overall games, and it's more specific to the narrative it's telling.
Well,
Right.
definitely. But
Oh, yeah,
it's
yeah, but it's
how
so
they
good.
make
Taking
use of it.
advantage
is
of like
so
what games can do that other things can't.
The pacifist one.
Yeah, yeah.
Even if we're
Yeah.
talking like major AAA games, like, I don't know if you guys have played like Far Cry 4. But it's like an AAA game, and I was surprised because like on the surface it very much just seems like a very shallow like it's like the open world.
Is that the
game.
one where you can win just by staying in the meeting?
Oh
room?
yeah, you
Yeah.
could end the game by just staying at
By
the
listening
table.
to the instructions
Yeah.
given to
I
you.
guess spoilers for like Far Cry 4, so skip ahead like 30 seconds. But like at the end of the game, like the final boss basically stares you down, and like you're given the option to kill him,
Yeah.
but he doesn't fight back, and like you can kill him and end the game like 10 minutes earlier or whatever, but like even though you should by all accounts by game logic just shoot him in the head, you don't, because like you actively feel frustrated, and then it's revealed at the very end like like you didn't have to do any of this. You could have just waited in that chair and everything would have been resolved.
You could have waited in that chair and listened to a man be tortured horribly.
Yes.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it's not just a like, oh look what you've done. It's like, what kind of character are you? It's still kind of asking questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
That one's really cool though. The fact that you can literally, and it's not short time from either. You have to sit there for like 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
a long time.
It's longer than anyone would naturally want to
Yeah,
sit
yeah.
there. I think there was another. So there's something to be said about games that use the time frame of game itself.
Yeah.
One of my favorite examples was in, I think it was the original StarCraft. If you sat on one of the loading screens for long enough, there was just a chicken menu, like a recipe for chicken that just starts scrolling across the screen in the text log. Because like games can do that. They can track how long you're sitting on a single screen for, and they can do memeier things with that.
Yeah,
on a
and
kind of more chill topic,
need to
like
do that more.
that game company sometimes, which does like Journey and Flower and Flow.
yeah,
Sometimes it just rewards you for like treating it as a screensaver. You get little just like pop-up achievements, being like just like appreciate the scenery, like little ways. Like,
Back on the topic of Metal Gear Solid,
Yes.
like if we want to talk about like really funny time-based events, you've probably heard of this already. Gavin, I know for certain you have. In Metal Gear Solid 3, in the Ends boss fight, like you're fighting like the sniper.
that's right.
He's an old
Yes.
man. If you
Yeah.
change the PS2 system clock to like 2 months ahead, he will literally die of old age.
Yeah,
in the
that's
middle
one of the ways
fight.
you can beat that boss fight is literally just by waiting the dude out so he dies.
Oh my god, that's
yeah.
hilarious.
Oh, actually, talking about like the weird like ways in which code can actually be used to explain narrative. If I understand correctly, Final Fantasy VII, one of the Turks, the bald fellow,
Okay,
Reno,
yeah.
Reno.
Reno
Reno
has a
Rivera.
crush on Tifa. in fights, he will not hit Tifa unless he's the last one left.
That's fun.
And that's an interesting way you can do the coding to like tell a narrative.
Yeah.
in
Yeah,
interesting
yeah,
ways.
You can switch targets around, and
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
really cool. But yeah, Metal Gear does such a good job of that. Like, I personally have never played a Metal Gear game. The closest thing to Metal Gear game is I think I once took the controller over from a buddy and played Metal Gear Rising.
Yeah.
But they're such interesting things, and like all the narrative I built around them was purely through internet osmosis because of how much
Yeah.
they're talked about.
Yeah, yeah.
Like the end thing and Psycho
yeah.
Mantis.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
such big parts of
Oh,
game
yeah.
culture.
Specifically 3. I think 3
Yeah.
is the most talked about Metal Gear game.
3 is the best
Which-
Metal Gear game, by the way.
because that's the one with Psycho Mantis, isn't it?
No.
No.
The
that two?
first Metal Gear, just Metal Gear.
Oh.
Yeah.
Metal
Metal
Gear
Gear
Solid, yeah.
Solid.
Three's the
yeah.
one-
Sorry, Metal Gear Solid is the Yeah, Metal Gear is for ordinary Nintendo. Metal Gear Solid is only for the PlayStation.
Yeah,
It gets
yeah, yeah.
confusing.
Okay. One of the Metal Gear games, one of the boss fights is literally the ghosts of all the
Oh
people
yeah,
you've
okay,
killed
yeah,
to
yeah.
that point.
that's
That's
three,
in
that's
3.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
in 3.
yeah.
Like 3 has some of the craziest boss fights I've ever heard about it
Yeah.
in my life, and it's so cool.
Though admittedly, I found the narrative a little bit less engaging than Metal Gear Solid 1 or 2 and 3. Like,
Yeah,
I had
3's
hard to get, like mechanically it was quite well done. Narratively, I feel like I preferred 1 and 2.
It's a lot
over-
simpler.
Yeah.
You know, like I feel like with 1 and 2, like they were definitely like trying to have like a deeper message. There is like a message in 3,
Yeah.
but it's not like so much like it's more of like a character's story rather than like a critique of like video games or warfare. There obviously is some of that in there, but like most of it is like a more straightforward like how to put it. So it's about like it's more about like the relationship between like Big Boss and
Mhm.
I guess the person who would be Big Boss. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
All right. Did we get all 3 of yours?
I was going to talk more about Final Fantasy, but I don't know if that's...
We went pretty deep into Final Fantasy, I think, and we
Final
got
Fantasy 1.
Okay, I like Final Fantasy 1. Let's
Okay,
give him the
okay.
floor. Let's give him the floor.
Fair enough.
That's
So
good,
again, talking about like the Satanic Panic, right? Like Final Fantasy 1 very explicitly drew from Dungeons and Dragons. So many of the Final Fantasy creatures, mind flares,
Yeah,
and like
yeah,
the ways
yeah.
that various things look, influenced by that. But I think also like people have to understand that it wasn't always intuitive that you could or should be able to save your game. Right?
Oh yeah,
Like-
because that would have
like,
been very
as-
new.
As a kid, actually, I remember vividly getting so frustrated because I couldn't get out the end stuff. Because when I stopped, it just stopped. Right? Like I was used to seeing like the old Mega Man or the old Castlevanias. You actually get a code if you have to put the code in.
Super Mario World was one of the first games I remember that gave you saving
Yeah,
options.
yeah.
Mario
that was
3
the Super,
too,
and that was
I
the
think.
Super.
No, Mario 3.
No, Mario 3 didn't. No.
This is Warrior of Light, right? The original one?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the Lich and
Which
everything.
there's that new Final Fantasy Origins that I think is like the prequel
Yeah,
to
yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, but so there are so many like just interesting like features about it, and quality of life things that we don't think about. Like if you were actually like targeting to hit an enemy, and that enemy was already dead, it would just hit nothing. It wouldn't actually select. Like there were
It
so many
wouldn't
of these
change.
things.
It's not anymore, dude.
About these switchovers, these
You had to
quality.
really think about it.
Yeah, like quality of life change, and just like how long the games were in terms of like going into a dungeon, getting out of a dungeon, random encounters. They don't really do random encounters that much anymore because it's super frustrating.
Yeah, it's obnoxious.
But it was
Yeah.
a way to like stretch out the game.
Yeah.
I like having random encounters or at least being able to kind of choose.
I feel like Tales did it in a good way, where
Yeah,
those
Tales
like
did
floating
too.
blobs
Yeah.
where it was still randomized,
Yeah.
but you could avoid it if
That
you
is what got me into Tales
kind of
games
like mixed
really hard.
model. But even just looking at this picture here, like that just looks like a Dungeons
Yeah, that
and
looks like
Dragons
Dungeons and
poster.
Dragons.
Although I gotta say, when it comes to Final Fantasy, the art, I always forget the guy's name. But like, if you look at like the title,
Oh, yeah.
on there,
Atsuno.
yeah,
Yeah,
Like
Amuro,
that-
Amuro.
Amuro.
yes,
Yeah.
because that original Final Fantasy art stuff
that is iconic.
so
but
good.
But that really wasn't that prominent in Final Fantasy 1.
No, it wasn't.
no,
at all.
it wasn't. But I think it like
You're
got
talking,
started
like-
and then like
It was more 2
as
onwards,
time
yeah.
goes on. Like I remember that being a big part of 6 for me
Yeah.
was seeing everybody
This
sort
stuff,
through.
right?
Yeah,
he has a
Yoshitaka Amano.
Yeah.
I haven't read it.
Yeah, on Humble Bundle right now, I think they still have the sale of the manga
Oh, cool.
that he's involved with in some way, shape, or form.
Because that's the thing about like retro gaming, right? Like, again, just talking about this like historical trajectory, the arcade style games, they were designed to destroy you
Yes,
because they
get
wanted
your
you,
money.
They wanted
They're
you to put
back,
those
baby.
quarters in. So when you play kind of those design sensibilities carried over to the home console, in which a lot of those early games were just trying to destroy you. If it wasn't for save states and emulators, I wouldn't get through some of them because they were so frustrating.
I mean, even looking at it now, like if you look at a lot of those retro games, they are some of the fastest speedruns out there because
Yeah.
the amount of content is so minimal.
Yeah.
They just managed to stretch it out because of you dying all the time. Right? Like,
I
you
remember.
can. Some of those speedruns are like an hour.
Yeah.
And I'm not even talking just like Super Mario 64 where you butt slide up the staircase to break through the world. Like there's ones that are
playing it as it's
legitimately
quote
just
unquote
that
supposed to be
short.
played.
Yeah.
Even just like I was playing Star Tropics 2, there's a mini boss where like it ejects you into this arena where basically there's just a narrow path and it's a conveyor belt that is rapidly swinging you around the outside of the level while the thing in the center keeps on rolling back and forth, just shooting you as fast as it can. And you don't necessarily even have full like
Just
range
a bullet
stuff.
hell.
Yeah, it was a weird one. I'm like, you wouldn't see this in a modern game outside of a game maybe like like Cuphead or something that's actively trying to like destroy you. But like that's now a choice, like a much more
Like a
intentional
Souls
choice.
game. You opt into that now. It's not the default.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy 1 is cool. I mean, the most
Yeah.
obvious, the most interesting fact about it is the most obvious one that everyone's already heard is that like it was Final Fantasy because they thought it was going to be the last game of the studio.
That is
right?
apocryphal, I'm afraid, my friend.
Is it really?
To the best of my knowledge, that is not actually the case.
No.
We can look this up, but to the best of my knowledge, that was
We're retconning it. It's canon.
you have to look this up now.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised.
I remember. I don't know if you know Final Fantasy Union. They're a YouTuber who's making a really huge SquareSoft documentary, and at least
I mean, Sakaguchi's final game, at least he said that.
Oh, he was considered.
okay.
So that might be
Yeah,
true. It
yeah.
might not have been the last one of the studio.
Yeah.
It might have been sort of like conflated.
Because
two
originally it was
different
supposed to be like
pieces.
Final Fight or something, and they were like there was a different name, and they were like, no, wait, that sounds too much like another video game. There were a lot of contingent things that made that.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff.
But I think it was supposed to be his last game that he was going to do. Which I mean, fair.
Yeah.
Um,
Also, people don't remember that it had like a weird time travel narrative. Like, it's
Yeah,
very
the
different
time
story.
like a Chrono Trigger level weirdness, or
I mean, at least Chrono Trigger had more explicit narrative. Final Fantasy 1 had such minimal narrative that trying to piece together what's actually going on is incredibly difficult.
so we're playing Kingdom Hearts. Cool.
Yeah.
I guess in Final Fantasy 1, like I don't know, should I spoil it? Because I mean, it's like a older than
Go for
Gavin,
it.
right?
Final
Go
Fantasy
for it.
1 we can do. Yeah.
Like because like at the end of Final Fantasy 1, like there's not really too much story leading
That's
up to it,
Garland,
but
right?
you basically learn that
Yeah.
like the guy you killed at the very start of the game, the very first boss of the game, like turns out the whole time he's been in a time loop because of these guys for sending him back in time, and then he sends them back in time and they heal him or whatever, right? And like it's all explained to you through like his like 3 text boxes of dialogue.
Yeah, that's it.
At the
That's all
very
you
end
get.
of the game.
Then you're cut
He's
off.
like, oh yeah, by the way, I'm the final boss. Hi, how's it going? Like, you know what I
Welcome.
mean?
It's nice to meet you.
Sup, guys?
Pulls a Doctor Who where everything's where you're running in
Yeah.
reverse of him
Yeah.
travel
And
lots
he-
of
and he-
times.
yeah,
Like,
and
Wibbly
even-
wobbly, timey wimey.
And even just how, like, like up on a structural level, that kind of like turn-based. I mean, there were other things that did some similar things, but it really set the mold for turn-based kind of like RPGs.
Yeah, no, it really did.
Because if you
It
look
defined
like
it.
stuff like the first Dragon Quest,
Yeah,
like
they still had that.
it was just one guy.
Yeah.
Like it was just literally just one dude. Like you didn't
yeah.
bring your homies along. It was just him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember that. But there was also like first person where like the screen is coming towards the little slime is getting bigger and
Yeah.
bigger.
Yes. Oh,
The old
God.
Dragon Quest games.
Okay, so
We have some Spyro feelings. I
yes,
see.
we're gonna we'll go quickly bullet time mine because we've already ran over the time, which I mean that's fine.
That's fine.
We spent a good 20 minutes just discussing. So my first one is Spyro. I don't know what it is with this purple lizard. I love him.
I
love him
his
so much.
design.
Love
He's
his
so
character, the
sassy.
lizard.
Yes.
Crash is my second one as well, actually. So they're both here, and I feel like it was something to do with the fact that like the original PlayStation was the first console I got super deep into.
That's fair, yeah.
And just like even the remake looks great. I don't know.
did a good
I think
job.
something to do with a basic platformer that was in 3D
Yeah.
allows you to remake it in such a way where you don't lose a lot of the charm. Obviously, Skylanders I think was a kind of a mistake.
Yeah.
There was people who liked it. Personally, not a favorite. Even Spyro's design in Skylanders is not my favorite.
Kind of cursed.
It's
Yeah.
not cartoony enough.
No, I think it was fine. To each their own. But I think specifically, like if you wanted to get back into Spyro here, the Reignited trilogy did an amazing job
Yeah,
of it.
that's what
Same
I
with the
heard.
Crash one too. Yeah.
Yeah, like Crash and Spyro are such like iconic franchises, and like especially to me as someone who grew up playing literally all 3 on the. I think they were all on the original PlayStation. So like you got a full trilogy of games on one console from start to finish too, which was nice because like a lot of games, especially someone who like was broke as a kid.
Yeah.
We had the one console.
Yeah.
That we had access to, and you couldn't go back and find other ones or go
Yeah.
forward. So you're stuck on this
Yeah.
one console for a long
Yeah, yeah,
time.
yeah.
So like having the full franchise there was so nice, and like even the classic ones. If you look at the retro, like the original Spyro games, like if we can find one, bloody hell, even just looked like God. His character design's so good.
Yeah, love it.
What was it? PlayStation 1, PS1?
Yep.
Yeah.
PS1.
Like They
I
don't
really
look
like the box art. Yeah, like the box art is like
Yeah.
really
Yeah,
stands
it
out.
holds up.
And
He's
then
got,
the,
like,
the
the-
remake, look, they did such a good job.
Yeah, the stance, he's ready
Like
to go.
he looks a little jank, but like
But,
you
I mean,
can
to
tell
be
what he's supposed to
expected,
be,
yeah.
and like
Yeah,
especially
yeah.
because you're seeing from behind most of the time. It's like
Yeah.
it looks fine.
Yeah.
Like I could go and play that still. It's not
Yeah.
to the point where it's like Final Fantasy VII, where
Yeah.
you're struggling to see what each thing is supposed to be. That's a basket, that's a dude, that's a gem, and that's a dragonfly. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Same with Crash. Like both of them are such good platformers, and funnily enough, they're very different in the way they platform as well, which is
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
Spyro's a lot like more big and open and everything. Right?
Yeah, and then one of the other games I wanted to quickly mention, but it was like an honorable mention because it's slightly too new, and that's the other franchise that came out. Obviously, there's Jack and Dexter, there's Ratchet and Clank,
Yeah.
but the forgotten franchise of Sony, Sly Cooper.
Yeah.
What?
Sly Cooper.
Oh, I don't know if
The
I've-
raccoon thief.
Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus.
Oh.
It was so
I am
much
uneducated.
Yeah, so Sly Cooper is this raccoon, and he's a thief.
Cool.
Pretty basic. He's got this crook, and one of the fun things about it is, first off, obviously, like they had these really cool art style for cinematics and stuff. It was going to get a TV show or a movie, and then they just dropped it.
Yeah, that was developing hell when it was.
The trailer looks great.
Yeah.
They did a little trailer. Looked great.
They
This is
escaped
the
the Sonic
gameplay.
uncanniness.
I think the fun thing about it is the crook. The crook gives you a ton of cool movement options, and as you play through, you're collecting these different little notes and stuff. And like, Sly Cooper was one of those games where it's like such a fun.
Yeah.
It's like a stealth game, so like
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
earlier than Assassin's Creed type things, and like honestly holds up a lot better than the original Assassin's Creed games. And you're just going around sneaking around, and I mean, obviously, furries exist.
Oh, what can we show on this podcast, Gavin? Getting into
But
dangerous
personally,
territory.
I like Sly Cooper such one of those franchises, but they haven't touched it in a long time, and I'm like,
Yeah.
why not?
They've made references to it and whatnot.
I mean,
but
there was one game that I think has come out since PlayStation All Stars, and that's it.
The fourth one, I heard it was like not that great.
No, but Sly Cooper is such a cool franchise, and it like
Okay.
almost feels like the spiritual successor for that time period after Spyro and
Yeah.
Crash
Yeah.
and them, right? Right when they were doing
Right.
Ratchet and Clank, right when they were doing Jack and Dexter in those, right?
yes.
And obviously, Jack and Dexter is really funny because
Yeah.
the first game to the second game, the tonal difference between those two is insane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, you could
'Cause-
definitely tell in like Jack 2, like they were riding that God of War hype train, where it's like
Yeah.
everybody needs to be edgy.
Yeah, yeah.
You
Yeah.
need to kill things. You need to swear. You know.
You
what
got
I
Jack
mean?
and Dexter here, right? Like the original one.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, look at this funny boy. And then you got like Jack and Dexter 2.
It's like this is what happens. When
There's also like the thing is
Yeah.
You got so suddenly like way
Yeah.
too serious looking
Yeah.
and less emotive. What was the other thing I was going to bring up? So those two are basically one together really quickly. The other thing I wanted to bring up was some Pokemon on the N64. So
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
there were some very
Yeah.
good Pokemon games on the N64, particularly Stadium and Snap.
Yeah, I remember Snap.
Snap I
Yeah.
loved. It was such a fun, relaxing time, and
Yeah.
they brought it back, and the new one's great. It's perfectly fine. It works great. I haven't finished it, but it's fun.
Yeah.
And it's funny to me that they never finished. Like they never. Where's Pokemon Stadium 3? Because they did Pokemon Coliseum.
And there was
They did Pokemon X Gala Darkness, and they did Pokemon Frontier or whatever.
Oh, it was one on the Wii, right? Where it was
Yeah.
like basically Pokemon Stadium,
But without the
just with
mini
different-
games.
Without the mini games, yeah.
Which I feel like is missing the point. Because one of the main things that people would do is you would go and play the mini games.
Yeah.
And that was one of the fun things about it because it was like, oh, they're so jank and so fun. Look at
What was
these.
your
Wow.
favorite minigame, Gavin?
Ooh.
I have to say, like, my favorite minigame was probably the one.
I like the
where
Eevee
you're-
one
The
or
what?
the ferret one.
The ferret one? Yeah, that was pretty good. I like the one where, like, you're Ratata, and, like, you have to, like, jump over, like, all those little things and
Yeah.
everything. I think it was basically just, like, a button mashing.
Yeah,
competition,
Mr. Mime as
but-
well, where you're
Yeah.
bouncing things using the wall,
Mhm.
playing Pong. But like, Pokemon Stadium is one of those things where it's like, we've had a few games that took parts of it, but they always seem to miss the minigame part, which I feel like is where me and my friends spent all of our time playing.
It was a nice little add-on, right? Because like you could tell it wasn't supposed to be like the main point of the game, but like
Yeah.
the potential to add in that like third
Yeah.
player, which is so
Yeah.
big, right?
Yeah.
Because like the N64 was kind of like a console where like it was built for 4 people, right? Like,
Yeah.
there were obviously like 2-player
Yeah.
experiences, but like
Yeah.
you could tell like
Yeah.
everything was built with like
Barman
a
64
full room
and-
in
yeah,
mind.
Yeah.
Right?
I
Mario
mean,
Party.
even Conker's Bad Fur Day had 4-player multiplayer, and clearly that one, the storyline was the main focus, right? Because it's got that weird genre-hopping storyline.
Yeah.
And then you've got the multiplayer, and the multiplayer is this like jank kit of like little PvP games,
It's
right?
just- yeah.
And I mean they're fun, and honestly, that was one of the biggest mistakes with Conquer Live and Reloaded, was that they changed the multiplayer completely.
Okay.
They took away all these fun little mini games that Conquer had of different game modes, like Thief and stuff like that, and dinosaurs and stuff, and they switched it to this like animal version of COD.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
And it was such a missed opportunity in Live and Reloaded, because like the storyline in Live Reloaded plays fine. It's perfectly adequate. It updated some of the controls, and then you've got like the multiplayer, and they've just completely swapped it. And I mean, some people liked it. It was fine. It just wasn't what I wanted out of the multiplayer. And then you go to like the latest renditions of Conquer, which is like they put him in Project Spark. And then recently they were talking about him on the HoloLens.
Yeah, I remember that. I think they canceled that game.
Yeah,
actually.
that died because Conquer looked terrible.
Yeah. On this Pokemon Stadium thing, they don't make a lot of compilation games anymore like they used to. Like there was Incredible Crisis with this like your Japanese family, and like they just have all sorts of weird mini games and talking about like the one weird day they had. Or
I hope WarioWare sold well. That's my hope, is because if WarioWare sold well, then maybe we can see another Pokemon Stadium.
I do think WarioWare has generally sold really well. At least it seems to be a pretty popular thing.
This is Conquer on the HoloLens. It's called Young Conquer.
Why did they think this was a good idea?
That's the worst.
Look at him. Look at him.
Compared to his other design, that is nowhere near as fun.
This is him in Project Spark, which I think looks way better.
He looks like himself.
You can see him in Project Spark here. He looks great. Look at Conquer. Look at the boy.
look at the chainsaw.
Yeah, because Conquer has a chainsaw and a frying pan and stuff like that. Conquer's a hyper-violent game.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Hypersexualized, hyper-violent.
Yeah.
Never played it before. Wouldn't have known just from the picture.
You wouldn't. You wouldn't. There's a
Very good.
very well endowed flower in one of the games.
Oh, that's that one. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the singing
I have a vivid memory of being in a game store and like a game store employee trying to explain to this mother why they might not want to get it for like
Yeah.
a 6-year-old.
Yeah.
And I just remember that scene. I was like, oh, that's how you do it. Okay.
Yeah. Yes. And then my third one, which I mean, I think it's more of an honorable mention. Technically, the other two were the real ones.
Yeah.
But I wanted to bring this up as my last thing to sort of close it off, which was Baten Kaitos, because it's one of the coolest games that is never talked about. So
Yes,
I've never
no
heard
one
of it.
knows this game.
Yeah, so I almost bought this game for the GameCube, the physical one,
Yeah.
but it was gonna be like $160, and I was not in the mood for
I-
it.
Oh, wow.
I actually own the Bane Kaitos and Bane Kaitos Origins.
They're so good. Okay,
They're
so
so good.
Bane Kaitos is a JRPG, as you can see why it's got 2 discs.
Yeah.
And essentially the cool thing about it was it was a turn-based RPG that uses deck builder mechanics.
Oh,
So think like Slay the Spire,
But like
Yeah.
20 years earlier.
but like
Holy
20
shit.
years
Yeah.
early in a JRPG format with like your JRPG characters, right? So you got like the main character looks so JRPG.
Yes.
And
You got,
like
the
it's so overtly not American.
Slay the Spire, but with angst.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like oh my
Yeah.
god, it's so funny. It reminds me of like the level of like I don't want to say the level of weeb, but it's like Dark Cloud level of weeb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so good. Now that you remind me about it, I need to absolutely go back and play it. 'Cause
But yeah,
can't believe
Bane
I remember
Kaitos is my
that
honorable
game.
mention. It's slightly too new, but I wanted to bring it up anyway, just because I feel like I'll never
Yeah.
get the opportunity to.
Did you ever play what was it called? I feel like it was called Forbidden Kingdom or something. It was another card game where you would go around, you would capture monsters in cards as you went, and you could use them as weapons and things like
I
that.
never heard of that.
I'd have to look it up. It is also a GameCube game.
Nice.
Maybe it wasn't Forbidden Kingdom. Oh, it's been so long.
Oh, there you go. These are the character designs.
Oh yeah.
This guy is the weirdest dude I've ever seen in my life.
So
Oh,
weird.
yeah.
Very much a weird character, similar to how like Dark Cloud has very strange characters as well.
Yeah.
I don't think Dark Cloud fits in this category either, but I remember me and my friends pretending that Dark Cloud was Link's and Zelda's kid for some reason, and we used to like. I don't know if you ever did this as a kid, but like
Yeah, you just-
pretend to be characters from video games. So, like we used to play Pokemon.
Oh, yeah.
We used to play Dark Cloud as well at one point.
Yeah, my friends and I would do that with Sonic.
And you would just believe something that was completely off base because you couldn't
Yeah,
just
yeah.
Google it. So
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
Dark Cloud is Link and Zelda's kid.
Yeah.
It's a successor, and you're like, okay.
All right.
You're coming up with your own headcanon.
Yeah.
And now we have entire websites dedicated
We got
to
AO3, we
that.
got Tumblr.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was the last one I wanted to bring up, and I think we've definitely gone over time here. So
If anybody gets a chance, absolutely, you can skip the first one.
don't
and
play
just
Origins. Just play Bane Kaitos. Myself.
Was it? I feel like Origins was like had the better mechanics and whatnot. Right?
I don't know, but I feel like I was way more into the original than Origins.
I'd have to play them again to make sure. I feel like Bane Kaitos played better.
Which one came out first?
Origins
Bane
was the
Kaitos.
second one.
Okay.
Because it's a prequel.
They both look very much the same age, though. They're both old
Oh
as
yeah.
hell.
Oh, I remember him from Origins, or them.
Them.
Bird person.
They're basically a homunculus, I think.
Yeah. But yeah, Bane Characters was a very, very cool game. Obviously, as well as many other games that were very cool and classic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go play old games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Specifically the ones we mentioned that hold up really well, like Super Mario.
Still
Yeah.
a lot to
Mario
do.
Still
World
holds up.
specifically.
Shout out to Ben for coming along.
Yeah,
as
yeah,
our guest.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
thank you
yeah.
so
That was
much,
awesome.
man.
I
Thank
wouldn't
you
even have
kindly
thought
for
about the
inviting me.
pinball stuff. That was really cool.
Okay. We will see you guys next time. Do we know what we want to talk about next week? Oh, guys. What were the 2 topics that we've left? Crowdfunding?
Well, were we gonna do
You
another thing, or were we
mentioned
gonna
game
do a
magazines at one
tier list
point.
next?
Yeah, if you do crowdfunding or a tier list.
Yeah, that's the question.
I feel
yeah.
like with crowdfunding, like we could definitely segue into like the next episode with like the disappointed / failed / incomplete crowdfunding, because we did mention Shenmue 3, right? And
Yeah. We
definitely
did.
one
We-
with, like,
we
some
have brought up that,
controversy
yeah.
around it and everything like that. So like I don't know. It's up to you guys.
Yeah, I mean, we did that tier list like, what was it? 3.
We started off
couple
with a
weeks
tier
from
list, so I
now?
think crowdfunding makes the most sense right
yeah,
now.
so do crowdfunding, and then maybe like the week after that.
So
we'll
stop
do
by next week for crowdfunding, and I think we'll
Yeah.
do failed Kickstarters or
Yeah,
failed
Kickstarters,
crowdfunding, or
failed /
ones that might have
controversial.
succeeded but did a poor job.
Yeah.
Disappointments in crowdfunding.
Disappointment.
A game that starts with M.
Hop in
Yeah.
and listen to
Oh.
us talk shop against Ouya.
Yeah.
We can also judge Stadia because it died now.
Yeah, it's gone.
All right, talk to you guys.